Good afternoon, everybody. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV, here to bring you the latest updates on yesterday's ICE shooting incident in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And any moment now, well, in about actually 5 minutes, we have a Governor Walz of Minnesota is going to be giving an update, a public safety briefing. A public safety briefing from Governor Walz in Minnesota in 5 minutes. And then the White House press briefing with JD Vance is going to come. It's going to happen in 35 minutes. Also, Kristi Noem made some comments a few minutes ago. So what we'll do is, after we watch the other things, we'll go to that. Okay, so we're gonna watch live coming up. Hold on, I'm gonna put it on the screen here. Live coming up, Tim Walz, Governor Walz coming up, and then we're gonna watch live the White House briefing with JD Vance, that I'm sure will talk about this at least in part, and then we're going to watch some of what Kristi Noem had to say. Am I going to show the protest? I've heard there's been some protest activity going on. I'm not positive specifically what you're referring to. If there's some sort of major protest going on and I can get footage of it, then I'll show it. It just depends on footage availability. I can't steal footage. So it's something I will keep an eye out for. Right now, I don't know that I have access to any kind of big protest footage. I'm not aware. I don't see it on any of my news agencies, but I will certainly keep an eye out for it. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out. All right, so we are in about 3 minutes. This is supposed to start. Give me 1 second here. Just give me 1 second. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, thank you to our moderators who are here. We have Janet B is here. We have Janet B over on YouTube. Thanks, Janet, for moderating over there. We have on X, Linda Belk, Larry, and Misha. Thank you. We have on Twitch, I Got That Fire, Matthew Kohai 3, and Certainly Dev. We have, hold on. Give me a moment here. Thanks to our Facebook moderators, too. Hey, thanks also to Christy Claft and Kristen McConnell Gates for subscribing on Facebook. Also, thanks to Estefan Alba for the Facebook stars. Estefan Alba on Facebook says, my right-wing friends and I have decided the incident is close enough that they're going to see it their way and I'm going to see it mine, and there isn't conclusive video evidence for one to change the other's mind. So we have essentially just agreed to disagree on this specific incident. Estefan says he would like to see ICE out of states. Hey, thanks to Estefan Alba. I appreciate it, Estefan. Thanks for your support and thanks for writing in. Estefan Alba on Facebook. MJ says, very mature of them. So in about 1 minute, this is supposed to start this press. Again, Governor Walz is speaking now. And at 1 p.m., in about a half an hour, we're supposed to get a press briefing at the White House with Vice President Vance is going to be there. Okay, so we are here live. Hey, a quick thank you also. Thanks so much to GD by GHD, who says, can you say cover up? Investigation is ongoing, by the way, but I'll give you more updates about that when we have a second. But we're about to hear from Governor Walz. Thanks to Skylar Spirit, who says, what mom goes out to harass ICE agents on a weekday? How about you take care of the kids or get a job? That's what Skylar Spirit said. The woman who was killed, this came out after we were on the air yesterday, was 37 years old. Renee Nicole Good, 37 years old. When I get a chance, once we watch these briefings, we'll discuss some of the other updates too. But we'll get this briefing any moment now. This is starting this briefing with Governor Walz. And then right after that, I hope they don't overlap. My guess is maybe they won't overlap. AP is reporting Minnesota investigators say they can't access evidence after fatal ICE shooting, and FBI won't work jointly on probe. I'll have to get you more on that. Oh, hold on. Anyways, we'll have to talk about that. But look, Governor Walz speaking right now. Hold on. Hold on.
Good morning. I'd like to start again this morning extending sympathies to Renee Good's wife and child, to the rest of the family. Deepest sympathies on an unimaginable tragedy and the horror of the last 24 hours. Also a deep thank you to Minnesotans and those across the country. I understand a fund has been set up to support Renee's 6-year-old child and wife. Other things being done. I would encourage Minnesotans and folks across the country in this moment. You're seeing neighborliness and kindness rise to the occasion. Is go and find out what they're doing there and give some help if you can. I'd also say last night we saw Minnesotans meet the moment once again. Thousands of Minnesotans demonstrated last night peacefully. They shared a message about the reckless ICE mobilization is not keeping us safe and led to the tragedy that the world witnessed once again. To Minnesota, I say thank you. There's strength in numbers, there's power in peace, and what we saw was a beautiful vigil to a life that we're starting to learn more about. And I will let those that want to push out false narratives, to slander or defame Renee Good, Minnesotans will tell her life story. Minnesotans will be there to defend her honor and see this as a human being, not a moment in time or the callous casualness that I've watched some people on TV gloss over what they saw. We've also spent a lot of time talking last 24 hours about accountability. That means no function of government operates with impunity. It means when someone's in a position of authority and they commit any act that impacts our people, there has to be another place to turn to get justice. Checks and balances. Basic idea, the center of the formation of our country. It's the only measure that protects us from the abuse of government or federal overreach or tyrannical government. Yesterday, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the BCA, spent the day yesterday attempting to get that accountability. We have learned that the Trump administration has now denied the state that ability to participate in the investigation. And I just want to make this as clear as possible to everyone. Minnesota must be part of this investigation. These are nonpartisan career professionals that have spent years building the trust of the community. There's a BCA Force Investigations Unit that was created by the legislature, by the people of Minnesota, to provide an independent, consistent, and trusted mechanism for investigating the use of force incidents involving law enforcement officers. Minnesota has seen our share of these. And what you've seen is, and I have witnessed it during my time, that these professionals have risen to the moment. They are trusted by people. People who are not by inclination trusting of law enforcement or government have come to see the professionals at the BCA as true arbitrators that can get them justice. The unit is the result of years of scrutiny, public engagement, and bipartisan legislative action. Minnesotans have made it clear time and again they expect transparency through this process where a police officer uses deadly force. The BCA, Superintendent Evans, have earned that trust by delivering on that expectation. I think it's clear to everyone as they saw this that it feels now that Minnesota has been taken out of the investigation. It feels very, very difficult that we will get a fair outcome. And I say that only because people in positions of power have already passed judgment, from the president to the vice president to Kristi Noem, have stood and told you things that are verifiably false, verifiably inaccurate. They have determined the character of a 37-year-old mom that they didn't even don't know. They've determined that the actions are done. I don't know. I've not used inflammatory terms of what happened. I've asked us to find the answers. The only way we find the answers is a thorough investigation by nonpartisan professionals. We've delivered that. We've been able to do it. We've earned the trust. And when I say that, the trust of BCA, and I tell Minnesotans the trust of law enforcement here. Everyone knows, globally, certainly here, that George Floyd, who was murdered a few blocks from this site, tore at the soul of who we were. But we healed. We built back trust. Chief Brian O'Hara came in and took one of the most difficult jobs in America of building back trust in the police force in Minneapolis after Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. And he's earned that. And he's level. And he's fair. And he's asking for that. And so, Minnesotans, I will continue to press that we be part of the investigation, that we do the investigation, so that Minnesotans can trust what the outcome is. I don't have a predetermined notion. Yes, I saw the video. Yes, I saw that. But a thorough investigation will see what happened before that. It will take all factors in, and it will come up with a fair and just conclusion. And we will accept that. Very, very difficult for Minnesotans to think in any way this is going to be fair when Kristi Noem was judge, jury, and basically executioner yesterday. That's very, very difficult to think that they were going to be fair. With that being said, Minnesotans, we've risen to the occasion so far, but it's going to get challenging. It's going to be challenging because I feel your anger. The human desire to lash out in this moment is very real. I can tell you that that is the wish of many people, that they fulfill the wish they want to see us turn on one another, turn towards violence rather than peaceful reconciliation, rather than peaceful civil disobedience. And we have to do our best to not play into that. I say this too when I saw yesterday some of the anger, whether it's Minneapolis Police, Minnesota State Patrol, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, Minnesota National Guard. They are there to protect and serve, as it said. They are there to protect Minnesotans. Throwing your anger at them only inflames this situation. And I know some of you were up at the Whipple building this morning, and to the press who are here, I saw some of this myself. Thank you. Continue to have access to every single space. Continue to cover this story. Continue to show the world what's out there. I will say it where our president won't. The press are the defenders of our democracy. You need to be there. But I also tell folks, protect our Minnesotans who are out there and don't turn the anger to them. This is a brazen use of force. They want us to bend the knee. They want us to capitulate. The way we give them what they want is allow them to use this as an excuse to put more troops on the ground. Use them as an excuse to show that these are violent protests. And I also witnessed what I think is going to be a pattern over the next few days in the coming hours, is I saw an individual show up there with the intent to antagonize folks who were peacefully protesting, with a bullhorn to scream at them. And again, the desire to move on that individual is exactly what they want, because our respect for the First Amendment means we will expect and respect all opinions. If this individual is there expressing support for ICE, that's their constitutional right to do so, and they need to be protected. Don't allow that to be a catalyst to create violence. We believe in states' rights. We believe the federal government needs to stay out of this. We believe that the situation has gotten worse and less safe because of their presence. And I will just say there were 2 incidents yesterday I saw after this that just tore at my soul. I saw an individual at the scene identify themselves as medical personnel, a physician, and asked to provide aid, and an ICE agent said, "I do not care." That lack of humanity was chilling to me. And after this incident happened, and after the tensions rose, ICE agents entered a Minnesota school, causing disruptions at that school. I can't say this strongly enough as governor, as a parent, as a teacher. To our elected representatives, Democrats and Republicans, I beg you, I implore you to tell them to stay out of our schools. This tragedy will be magnified 100-fold if this fight moves into the hallways of our public schools amongst our youth. And they're watching us. They're watching us now, how we respond. So I've got a few simple asks. Let us, the professionals, handle this on Minnesota soil, this investigation. De-escalate this situation by removing yourselves from this situation with these 2,000 agents that were put here. And above all else, stay out of our schools. I'd like to ask you to care, but that might be a step too far for some people. But I know Minnesotans care. So we'll protest peacefully. We will win in courts. We will certainly win in the defense of our democracy, because the American people see what's happening here. But the way that we don't win and the way that we lose, if this turns towards violence and allows them to escalate. It cannot happen. So I ask the grass top leaders out there, the faith leaders, the folks who are on the streets, and in many times the true leaders are not the elected officials. They're the folks on the ground. I beg you, implore you, follow those words of the leaders we've had. I had the privilege of serving with John Lewis. And John talked about good trouble. I'm not telling you not to find good trouble. But I asked John many times, I said, "John, I don't know if I'd have your self-restraint. Didn't you want to lash out?" He said, "Yes, daily." But he said, "I wanted to win this. I wanted to do what right, and I wanted justice to prevail. And to do that, I knew the only way was to not lash out, to not give in to that." So to each and every one of you, we're not going to win this through violence. We're going to win it through justice. We're going to win it through compassion. We're going to win it through Minnesota Nice, and we're going to win it by holding every one of these people accountable, as they should, for what we've seen on the streets of Minneapolis. With that, I'm going to turn to Commissioner Jacobson to give you a situation update.
Thank you, Governor. Again, I'm Bob Jacobson, and it is my honor to serve as the Commissioner of Public Safety. First of all, again, I want to express my sincere condolences to the loved ones of Renee Nicole Good. Someone has lost their life, and that is not something that anyone takes lightly. Minnesotans came out yesterday to express their grief, their frustration, and their anger at this terrible tragedy. I expect that they will continue to come out today. And I want to thank everyone who demonstrated peacefully. This helped honor Renee's memory and gave her family space to mourn. Minnesota's residents and visitors have the right to demonstrate and to exercise their First Amendment rights. I want to remind everyone that there are safe ways to do so. Our goal is to reduce tensions, to avoid conflict, and to maintain a calm environment. As I mentioned yesterday, we recommend the following safe and lawful ways to demonstrate. Please get together peacefully with others in public areas where pedestrians are allowed. March or walk together in pedestrian areas, please, not on the roadways. Make your voice heard through chants, speeches, and displaying signs. And there are a few things I just want to mention very quickly that are unsafe. Because as always, our top priority is public safety, and we cannot allow behaviors that create hazards, threaten public safety, or disrupt emergency services or endanger people nearby. That would include certainly demonstrating on the freeway, walking on highways, throwing objects, setting things on fire, property damage, graffiti, fireworks, illegal weapons, reckless and dangerous driving, or assaultive or aggressive behavior. I know that we all want more definitive answers about that fatal shooting that occurred yesterday. And as we are able to get those answers and dispel rumors and false information, then we can rightfully honor Renee's memory and help her family, loved ones, and our community heal. With that, I'll turn it back to Governor Walz and maybe a few questions.
Please. Right. Esme? I have not. As I said yesterday, I did speak to Secretary Noem and received a lot of talking points. I will note that I asked Secretary Noem how she would have felt if President Biden had sent 2,000 troops into Rapid City, South Dakota, and she said she would have welcomed them. I leave that for the folks of South Dakota to determine. I've not spoken to the president. I would ask him, first of all, the goal here is to make America safe, is what he said. There is no verifiable evidence that any of this is making America safer. I would ask him to de-escalate in the moment, to allow Minnesotans to back up and grieve, to allow this investigation to be played out by the rule of law. I said it again, I have not passed any judgment on this. And to please, whatever it is, leave Minnesota alone. Earlier this week, I don't know if it was if something he wanted to have already made it clear. I'm exiting the stage here in a year. But I told him I have a year to continue to do what I love dearly and what I believe I've been good at, making Minnesota a better place to live. The number of calls we got today of parents asking if they should send their kids to school or not. Minneapolis had to make what I believe was the absolute correct decision to cancel school. We have students out of learning today. I would just ask him, I'm not talking anything about border security. I'm not talking anything about what he needs to do on that. None of this is accomplishing either his mission or making us any safer. So just give us a pause. Let us breathe. Look, we're exhausted. We're exhausted as Minnesotans. We're exhausted as Americans. And this relentless assault on Minnesota, for whatever reason, is just cruel now. It has reached cruelness. So please, just give us a break. And if it's me, you're already getting what you want. But leave my people alone. Leave our state alone. And look again and see what's happening. It's not me saying it. You're hearing it from many, many others. So that's what I would say.
Law enforcement from conducting an independent investigation into this, even if the federal government does not want to have you have a joint investigation?
So, great question. We have asked for cooperation from the federal government. We were invited in to do a joint investigation on this initially. We continue to work with the federal government all the time on joint investigations. This is not something new, whether it be with the FBI or other federal law enforcement agencies, so we are accustomed to doing joint investigations. As the governor has mentioned, our force investigative unit within the BCA has a stellar reputation for doing quality investigations, for finding the answers to the questions that people have. There are so many questions out there that I know the public has from watching what's been shown on social media and regular media, and the goal for me would be to provide an investigation, preferably in tandem with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, because we work with them all the time, and they do have all the evidence in the original investigative notes and reports. We have none of that. They have shared none of that with us. We would welcome the opportunity to jump back in, to do that investigation, use our high-quality investigators from the BCA to be able to do that with them, to find the answers that the public deserves. Without any of that information, or without any of that assistance from the FBI or the federal government, we would be at a loss to be able to initiate and conduct a thorough investigation. For us to be able to do that, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, without cooperation from the federal government.
How difficult would it be to file state charges without the cooperation of the FBI?
To be able to file state charges, we would need, again, a full investigation, which would include the opportunity to have been at the crime scene, to have had the opportunity to take a look at all the video and evidence that the FBI would have in their possession. I don't make any prejudgments about what happened yesterday. We can all see what we want to see on the videos and what we have seen in the media. That doesn't mean that none of us, I will not, as a public safety professional, jump to any conclusions as to who is at fault in this. What I will say, though, is that unless we do that thorough investigation, unless we have access to all of that evidence, unless we have access to the agents that were involved in that, to any witnesses, without any of that, we would not be able to put together a quality investigation for any prosecutor to be able to make a determination as to whether or not someone should be charged with a crime.
I'm going to note on this, too, that no one less than Tom Holman yesterday said it would be unprofessional to pass judgment ahead of time. Now, the disconnect between what Tom Holman said and Kristi Noem said needs to be rectified by the federal government. I will note, too, this is a question I asked, not being an attorney of my team, and it will go to the family, that there will certainly be civil cases filed on this, and those will be filed in Minnesota court and be held in court. Corn?
What is standard operating procedure when a federal agent of any kind in Minnesota shot and killed somebody, a civilian? Are you usually involved? Is there usually a joint investigation?
Generally, if there is any investigation involving use by a federal officer, generally the federal government, federal officials will lead that investigation. We have participated in numerous investigations in the past. It is very infrequent where there's a use of force by a law enforcement officer, federal law enforcement officer, but we have worked jointly and shared information in previous investigations.
I'd like to say, I'm gonna add on this. I'm gonna say, if you truly wanted to de-escalate this situation, the logical conclusion would be to follow that procedure and allow Minnesota to participate. And that's where we started yesterday, and it's one of the reasons I came out here, and I'm not going to criticize that because that was the proper process, and I'm going to have to talk to Minnesotans to try, and it's a very difficult task. I think we all know what can happen here, to calmly wait until all the facts come out. I think you in this room are seeing the gravity of this situation by not allowing Minnesota to participate, and the prejudgment that's already been made by leadership creates a very, very dangerous situation. And that's why, once again, I'm going to reiterate to our federal partners, simply let us be part of this. Use our professional folks. They will gain you the credibility and the trust of Minnesotans to believe the work that you're doing is honest, and it's not just a whitewash to backfill a predeceived notion. All right, so I got 10.
That the state can do to put in additional protection around schools or to allow for additional e-learning days for these situations?
Yeah, it's interesting, Dana, that you would ask that. We were just, as we were coming in here discussing, someone asked about that, and they mentioned Ruby Bridges and the Little Rock folks about escorting people in. We have not determined that yet, but it is a situation that we're going to have to explore. As I said, again, the thing that cut me deeply was watching what happened in our schools and the chaos. And I was on with Commissioner Jett this morning as he's talking to folks from St. Cloud to Duluth about what they think about today. Should we be in classes today and tomorrow in those schools, or does it pose a potential risk? And so we're trying to figure that out. I think many of the things and the lessons we learned during COVID is local communities and local schools being able to make some of these decisions in the long run probably gets us better outcomes, but we are deeply concerned with that. I'm going to come back as soon as we get any more information from all of you. We'll be in front of you again. I will reiterate, and many of you know my wife Gwen, the First Lady, is an English and literature teacher, and we were talking about some of this, and she got asked the question, and it was being, when will all of this end? And what Gwen said, it will end when enough people say it will end. And I think that is sage advice. And then I couldn't help but thinking, and it scares me a little bit, I heard those words. We remembered, many of us in here in sophomore, when we read it, that the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most important directive. It certainly feels like that in this moment. And so I want Minnesotans to not believe that I'm telling you not to be angry, not to be scared, not to be feeling a little bit hopeless in this moment. But I would also say this, and I saw it last night, I saw it during George Floyd, I've seen it throughout our history. When things looked really bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held that line for the nation on that July 3rd, 1863. And I think now we may be in that moment that the nation's looking to us to hold the line on democracy, to hold the line on decency, to hold the line on accountability, and more than that, to rise up as neighbors and simply say, we can look out for one another. We can have differences. But we've proved to the world going on 250 years that our democracy could hold. It feels to me like we're at one of those inflection points. That simply asking our government to give us accountability, listen to local leaders, ratchet down the rhetoric, let people feel safe in their person, and let's let our kids go to school without fear. Let's let our kids go to school knowing that tomorrow could be a little better day. And so we're going to work on that. I'll leave you with this, and I'm not sure when we'll get in front of you next, but to Minnesotans, again, just one last time, don't give them what they want. Don't give them the unrest that they want. Don't give in to allowing them to bring more folks in here. Don't allow them to expand this somewhere else. Rise up, wrap your arms around your neighbors, peacefully express your First Amendment and your constitutional rights, and let's start healing, get some answers, and move Minnesota forward. Thank you.
All right, let's go over to the White House. Hang on a moment. We're going to go over to the White House right now. Give me a moment here. We're about to go over to the White House. That was Governor Walz. There's about to be a White House press briefing with JD Vance. Let me get that on the screen for you right now. Check it out. Hold on. There it is. There's Fox News' Peter Doocy. So you heard Governor Walz of Minnesota not happy that the Trump administration is not allowing Minnesota, the state, to be part of the investigation into the shooting. And the head of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety said they really couldn't do their own investigation adequately without the cooperation of the federal government and, the evidence that they would supply. So again, Governor Walz was not happy about that. AP also reports the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Superintendent Drew Evans said today that after the agency consulted with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the FBI, it was decided that it was initially decided that the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Investigations Unit would conduct a joint investigation with the FBI, and the BCA responded promptly to the scene and began conducting investigative work in good faith. But according to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Superintendent, the FBI then informed the BCA later yesterday that the U.S. Attorney's Office had changed the plan. And now the investigation will solely be led by the FBI, and the state Bureau of Criminal Apprehension will no longer have access to the case materials, to the scene evidence, or to investigative interviews necessary to complete a thorough and independent investigation. So that statement was from Drew Evans of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. I actually have the statement right here. Maybe I can post it for you. I'm going to post this, and I'm going to show you the statement. While we're waiting here. Actually, give me one more moment here. Hang on, I got to thank a couple people too. We're waiting for the White House press briefing. JD Vance is going to be there as well. Hang on. The clock is now counting up. The clock is counting up. We don't want that to happen. Let me fix the clock here. I'm going to leave this on. I'm going to leave here. I read you the basic idea of the statement, but after the White House press briefing, we can look at the full Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension statement. I'll show you that. I basically read you the I would say most relevant part. We'll look at it after. Also, after this, we will look at what Kristi Noem had to say a short while ago today. She took some questions on the shooting and the investigation. So after the White House press briefing, we will hear. I'll show you that as well. Let me actually put on the screen. Any moment, White House press briefing with JD Vance. Vice President Vance is going to be there. Hey, thanks so much to Gary Baines for the memberships. Thanks also to Iroquois and Scotsman, our members. Thanks so much to Goxbirds, Old Boy Pona, thanks for your support. Crazy Yoda, thank you so much, Crazy Yoda. Elvado1, thank you so much, Elvado1. Also, Logan Misiak, Ion Industries, Mitchell Pilot, thank you, Mitchell Pilot. Parara 12, Sofa King, Trav Wake, Coltred, Walter Scott, Scotsman, Brian Timber, IMTHMK, and also, hold on a moment, Iroquois 7550, thank you. And I also want to shout out our moderators. Well, I have a second. Oh, also, thank you so much to TechSlug. TechSlug says, if the ICE agent believed it was a justified shooting, why did he flee the scene after approaching her vehicle and capturing video of her on his cell phone? That's what TechSlug says. Our viewer Goxbird says sanctuary city laws prevent local law enforcement from working with the feds. Now they want cooperation? Hey, thanks to our moderators. We have moderating Chromite. Thanks, Chromite, for moderating. Good to see you. Janet B. Thanks, Janet B., for moderating. Appreciate it. Also, thanks to Big Ball of Yarn. I got that fired. Matthew Kohai 3, Papa Bear, and Surly Dev. They are all there over there on Twitch moderating. Linda Belk, Larry, and Misha moderate for us on X. Thank you so much. Margaret Riley, K. Lowry Body, moderating right now on Facebook. Huge thanks. Hold on a second here. And thanks also Babaloo for the memberships. Thank you, Babaloo. We are going to have more updates for you. We'll take more of your comments after the press briefing. Again, I want to show you what Kristi Noem had to say, but we'll wait until after the White House press briefing for that, as we wait and we look at Peter Doocy from Fox News. Mike B. says it's crazy how two people can watch the same video and have such different opinions on what happened. Try to get a little more volume for you. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I had this too zoomed in. I'm sorry. This is overly zoomed in. Not that it's really big difference, but hang on. That's better. You know, I was like, man, they're really close up on Peter Doocy, but actually, I because when I switched the camera over, that's the correct angle. Sorry, didn't mean to be giving you such a close-up. That is the correct angle.
A few hours before this deadly shooting happened in Minneapolis, JD Vance was giving an interview with Jesse Waters where he said that he thinks Tim Walz should resign because it's a separate issue because of all of these allegations of fraud in Minnesota. So Walz is out there now saying that he thinks he might have to mobilize the National Guard in Minnesota to protect Minnesotans from federal officers and ICE officers who are endangering the community. We would expect to hear from the Vice President any minute about that, and also about this litmus test that JD Vance sees. Now, he posted on social media that he wants all Democrats, including those who are running for president and seeking office in the midterms, to answer a question. Do you think this officer was wrong in defending his life against a deranged leftist who tried to run him over? So there are questions about what exactly happened. There are questions about rhetoric on both sides that we would expect addressed any minute.
That's the camera is picking up Peter Doocy doing a live hit on Fox News. Okay, so as you heard Peter say, JD Vance will be appearing. Now, when this starts, I'm going to probably switch to the White House feed, but let me just make sure I have that ready, because that's usually a bit more better for you guys. Hang on here. Okay, yeah, we're good to go. So I'll probably switch the camera when it starts, but I'll get the best feed for you. I'm assuming that JD Vance is going to be there to talk about this incident, although it's possible he's there to talk about something else. But even if he is, I assume he'll also talk about this incident. Hey, thanks to Sevenfold for your support. Sevenfold says law enforcement. Oops. Sevenfold thinks law enforcement using deadly force on citizens should always be an absolute last resort. Sevenfold thinks the video clearly shows a cop jumping in front of a moving vehicle and using officer safety as an excuse. Brian Harper says, seemed like she used her car as a weapon. Crazy to do that in front of armed officials. Our viewer, Market Dragon, says she was told to leave at the same time. Where is it here? Sorry, the comment flew by. Sorry, Market Dragon, I'm trying to find your comment. Flew by, a lot of comments. Adam Pryor thinks she did not run over the agent with her car, nor did she try to. She was trying to leave the area. Lost says, video clearly shows the perp was spinning out with wheels pointed at ICE agent. DD Oja thinks you can be pro-ICE and still know this was excessive force. One cool cat says, shocking, even with video, nobody can agree on what happened. Arena Kushner says she was told to leave and that she was detained confusing directions. I certainly would be interested if, I'm sure more of this will come out in investigation about what instructions she was hearing from the various officers. There were various officers there. Also, the only video I've seen is starts right before it happened. So I don't know what was happening in the several minutes before then. Our viewer, hold on. Bork says, common sense says you don't put yourself in the middle of police doing their jobs. Is there body cam? So I believe that, Kristi Noem was asked about that, but I haven't actually watched the Kristi Noem footage yet. I don't know for sure what exists. But we'll watch what Kristi Noem said after this White House press briefing. Thanks to our member X-File. Thanks also to Mitchell Pilot. And Jake First. Jake thinks she accelerated toward the officer after refusing the order to get out of her car. Mitchell Pilot says, I look forward to seeing the body cam footage. Now, I don't know if there is such footage. I don't know if there is. Will it be released? I don't know. Elvado1 says an innocent lady is now gone. Crazy Yoda thinks FBI removed Minnesota from the investigation due to their sanctuary policies. Thanks Achuk9474, who thinks the law only cares whether or not the officer believes his life was in danger. Thanks also Missouri Mahler. Jenfa thinks the officer told her to get out of the way, not out of the car. Now, there was an officer pulling on the car door, or trying to open the car door, it looked like. Jay Sledge thinks she did hit him. It's on video. Missouri Mahler says JD is about to set a lot of people straight. Thank you so much, Bubba Dog. Exotic PV says the officer almost shoots his partner next to him, definitely not trained properly. That's what our viewer Exotic PV thinks. Bubba Dog says, imagine if she had just put the car in park, silly. Carolina says, stay home, stay alive, simple. Soulless OAS says, you'll never see the footage because it would prove the administration wrong. Thanks to Luke, who it is, our member. Thanks ADAA60, who says, common sense says 3 angles of video already recording her car shows a lot happened before the clip we were provided. How do people not see this? Paul Palma says she was home. I read a story last night that she was killed several blocks from her home. That's one story I read last night. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I read last night, that it was several blocks from her home. I'll have to check and see if there's more updates on that. Trail Chapters says, I would not want my daughter to park and comply with those yelling officers. They were terrifying. Jay Sledge thinks the gun was not pulled until after the officer got hit. Thank you, Timberwolf. Timberwolf thinks it's against the law to block anyone from free movement. 2010 Mr. Scarlett said, you know, the chat, the comment flew by. So I can't read it anymore. Hey, thanks to Zendor for your support. American says you still have to listen to cops even if they are terrifying. Terrifying in quotes. Thanks to Babelicious Nails and Granite Man. Babelicious Nails thinks the video shows the officer was not in danger and she turned to avoid hitting him. Our viewer Jeannie says just stay home with your kids, simple. Zevina says, what do you do when you're being told to do two different things that are conflicting? Thank you to ADAA 60. Dolores Wilson says she should have complied to ICE commands. Zamilla says chat thinks it's valid for cops to shoot people for not complying. We are waiting for JD Vance and the White House press briefing. Vice President Vance will be at the briefing. It was supposed to start at 1. Sometimes these start late, so that's not surprising. Bill says, yeah, why didn't the cop read her mind? She wasn't dangerous. F. Shore says a vehicle is a deadly weapon. Shameless Senpai, thank you, who says it is threat perceived, not actual threat. She presented as a threat when she started driving. Thank you, the Buffalonian. Occupy 49ers says, what does someone gain from justifying this? The Buffalonian says this is the new reality for all domestic terrorists. Curtis Beef says Cott put himself there so he could shoot. Todd Gary M says she was shot for trying to run over a law enforcement officer. Thank you, Granite Man, who says armchair quarterback talk doesn't help. We love you. We love you. TJ says, do we have the identity of the ICE officer? I have not heard that person identified. Doesn't mean it hasn't come out. I have not heard it. I was watching an interview with a legal expert last night who said there could be a civil suit, that maybe the family would sue the officer, which is different than a criminal proceeding, which there might or might not be. Daniel says, officers are not permitted to stand in front of running vehicles during a traffic stop. Matt Brinson says, if I were given conflicting orders, I would comply with the one most likely to not get me shot. John Flick says, it's about time we separate into two different countries and see where everyone is at in a few years. Thank you, the Scaled One, for your support, and the Laggin' Dragon. The Laggin' Dragon says, as a Republican and a supporter of ICE, I believe it was definitely excessive force. The Scaled One says, do not interfere with a law enforcement operation and you won't get hurt. Thanks, Ben in Kentucky, and AW3T6R, and Say Rah Rah. AW thinks ICE is not allowed to enforce traffic violations, like parking incorrectly on the road. That's what AW thinks. S. Sobel says, why, if an officer's life was in danger, would none of the other officers draw their weapons? I believe, I don't know for sure. It looked to me from the video like only one officer fired. Chris says, don't stand in front of an SUV and you won't get hurt. Kuhneberger says she made a bad choice by not obeying the law enforcement officer. It was a very volatile situation. Hattolusen thinks she should have complied. Hey, thank you to Chocolate Angel and The Light True Crime and Mango Elini and NVix Media. Mango Elini thinks the officer's feet were already positioned to the side of the car and he was out of the way by the time the first round was fired. William thinks she made poor choices. Content says you shouldn't be shot because you were in the way. They could have tracked her down with her license plate number. Thanks, Content 13 and Mike Rivers and Zendor 5535 and Sean Ryder. Again, any moment this will start. Was supposed to start at 1, so any moment now. We are waiting for the White House press briefing. JD Vance will be there. Gemini Rose says we really don't know the whole story here. Three Voice says you can support the current government and still use logic at the same time. 2-minute warning. We just heard the 2-minute warning. Now again, when the briefing starts, I may switch to the White House feed. So when it starts, if you see the camera switch and you hear double volume for like a second, it's because I'm switching the feed to get you the best feed. I have multiple feeds, but I'm probably going to switch to the White House feed because with the White House feed, you get to see the questioners. So I'll probably switch to that one. This is the Reuters feed right here. So we'll get you the best camera angle and sound. But the White House is not live yet this feed is, so we have this one up right now. Let's see what the White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, here she comes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me be clear. President Trump and his entire administration stand fully behind the heroic men and women of ICE and will always uphold law and order in the United States of America. The deadly incident that took place in Minnesota yesterday occurred as a result of a larger, sinister, left-wing movement that has spread across our country, where our brave men and women of federal law enforcement are under organized attack. Right now, immigration and customs enforcement officers are facing a 1,200% increase in assaults, a 3,200% increase in vehicle rammings, and an 8,000% increase in death threats. ICE agents are faithfully enforcing federal law to protect the safety of the American people by removing criminal illegal aliens from our country, which is exactly what nearly 80 million Americans elected President Trump and Vice President JD Vance to do. Radicals in the Democrat Party are furious over this. They don't want our border secured or criminal illegal aliens being removed. As a result, Democrats are impeding immigration enforcement operations daily, creating extremely heightened and dangerous circumstances that make it nearly impossible for the men and women of law enforcement to simply do their jobs. Democrats are calling to defund federal law enforcement agencies who are protecting public safety. And Democrats are calling to abolish ICE and defund the police. That will never be allowed to happen under this president and vice president. The Trump administration will redouble our efforts to get the worst of the worst, criminal illegal alien killers, rapists, and pedophiles off of American streets. The Department of Homeland Security will continue to operate on the ground in Minnesota, not only to remove criminal illegal aliens, but also to continue conducting door-to-door investigations of the rampant fraud that has taken place in the state under the failed and corrupt leadership of Democrat Governor Tim Walz. Taxpayers have been ripped off to the tune of billions of dollars in this one state alone, and that is going to end, and people are going to be held accountable. The Trump administration has activated thousands of federal agents, doubled the number of U.S. attorneys in the DOJ office in Minneapolis, and surged resources to hold fraudsters accountable and demand justice for law-abiding American taxpayers and citizens across our country. And that's what brings the Vice President out here with me today to discuss all the Trump administration is doing and to make an additional important announcement on this front. So please, Mr. Vice President, will be joining us now.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I want to echo some of what Carolyn said about what we're doing to combat the rampant fraud that exists in our immigration system, thanks to failed politicians and thanks to people who allowed the American taxpayer to be taken advantage of for far too long. I think it's important to understand why this matters to the American people. I am a father of 3 young kids, a lot of people in my generation. What is that going on there? Is that normal? Okay. CNN installed this broken camera just to throw me off my game, but it's not going to work. So here's the simple fact here. If you're a young parent struggling to afford childcare in the United States of America, there are programs that we have to make it easier for your kids to get in daycare, for your kids to get in preschool. Those programs should go to American citizens, not be defrauded by Somali immigrants and others. Make it hard for you to get the access to the resources you need. But number 2, making it easier for people who shouldn't even be in this country to fleece the United States and our taxpayers to begin with. We have actually activated a major interagency task force to make it possible to get to the heart of this fraud. We have Department of Agriculture resources that are focused on SNAP fraud so that people who need food benefits can get them, but illegal aliens and other fraudsters don't. We have over 1,500 subpoenas that the Department of Justice has issued to get to the heart of the fraud ring. We've done almost 100 indictments, mostly Somali immigrants, but also a few others. And of course, we're looking in with broad investigatory authority to a number of the instances of wrongdoing that we've seen in Minneapolis. But we also want to expand this. We know that the fraud isn't just happening in Minneapolis, it's also happening in states like Ohio. It's happening in states like California. And so what we're doing in order to help coordinate this remarkable interagency effort from the Trump administration, but also to make sure that we prosecute the bad guys and do it as swiftly and efficiently as possible, is we are creating a new Assistant Attorney General position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud. Now, of course, that person's efforts will start and focus primarily in Minnesota, but it is going to be a nationwide effort because, unfortunately, the American people have been defrauded in a very nationwide way. I want to thank a couple of people for their cooperation, in particular Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, first of all, for getting a lot of resources to Minneapolis to start to investigate and prosecute this fraud, really at an industrial scale. We've never seen fraud like this in the history of our country. Pam has been doing a great job to get the resources there to uncover it, but importantly, Creating a job like this often takes months, sometimes even longer. When we realized that we needed this Associate Attorney General position, Pam got this person up and running in about a week. We're going to make the nomination hopefully in the next few days. We'll obviously let you guys know who that is when we do it. I've talked to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who has promised me swift confirmation for this official, but this is the person who is going to make sure that we stop defrauding the American people. Here's one final thing I'll say about this. I've heard a lot of people say that we need a special counsel to investigate fraud in the United States of America. I actually agree, and that's what this position does. It has all the benefits, all the resources, all the authority of a special counsel, but with two crucial differences. Number one, it will be run out of the White House under the supervision of me and the President of the United States. And number two, it's actually constitutionally legitimate. As you guys may know, the special counsel statute has some major constitutional questions. When we get the bad guys, we want to make sure we get them permanently and they don't have some legal technicality they can get out of, which is why we set it up as an Associate Attorney General. I'll take some questions, but I want to make just one final observation here. When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally, because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing that you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before, and everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Every single one of you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I wanted to read a quote from Tim Walz earlier today. He said, "When things looked bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held the line for the nation on July 3rd, 1863, and I think we may be in that moment now." Can you comment on his rhetoric and Mayor Jacob Frey and whether they want to see unrest in Minneapolis?
Well, that's very tough rhetoric from a guy who just quit because his fraudulent activities have been uncovered. Look, Tim Walz is a joke. His entire administration has been a joke. The idea that he's some sort of freedom fighter, he's not. He's a guy who has enabled fraud and maybe, in fact, has participated in fraud. That's what this new Assistant Attorney General position is going to find out. I don't care what Tim Walz says. I care about getting to the bottom of this fraud for the American people, and I care about enforcing the nation's immigration laws. That's what we're going to stay focused on.
Unrelated question here. I mean, Democrats have accused ICE of murder. They've said they're targeting Americans. They've told ICE to get the F out of Minnesota. This is going to stoke the fire against ICE agents. And you're talking about ICE agents right now and being concerned about them. What, if anything, is the administration going to do to make sure these folks are protected during these protests? But also, should DHS sort of revisit their procedures here? I mean, nobody wants to see an American killed. Are there changes that need to be made to make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Look, first of all, of course, nobody wants an American citizen to be killed. This is absolutely a tragedy, but it's a tragedy of the making of the far left. They have radicalized a very small segment of the population, taught them that ICE agents are engaging in wide-scale violation of people's rights. What our ICE officers are doing is deporting the millions of criminal aliens that were let in during the Biden administration. So number one, we have to say, as a matter of leadership, and I would appreciate if the Democrats would join me on this, let's be honest about the fact that we have way too many illegal aliens in this country. Our ICE officers should be supported in doing their job. You're trying to actually marshal the far left lunatic fringe to engage in doxing, to try to make it impossible for them to enforce the law, and in some cases actually to engage in acts of domestic terrorism against our law enforcement officers. When you talk about different plans, different protocols, different policies, I forget exactly how you asked the question. Here's the simple fact. What we're going to do is make it easier for the American People's Administration to enforce the American People's law. And that means that Democrats have to stop rallying the mob against legitimate law enforcement operations. And that means that we are going to get tougher, and that's what this AAG position is about. We're going to get tougher at the people who are defrauding the United States by inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's one of the things that we're going to do. We've already started that work at the Department of Justice, but we're going to keep on doing it, and this new AAG position is going to kick that into high gear.
Vice President Vance, you just suggested that this woman who was killed, Renee Good, is part of a broader left-wing network. Who do you think is behind this broader left-wing network?
Well, it's one of the things we're going to have to figure out, but here's the way that I put it. When somebody throws a brick at an ICE agent, or somebody tries to run over an ICE agent, who paid for the brick? And who told protesters to show up and engage in violent activity against our law enforcement officers? You see, just with this most recent terrible incident in Minneapolis, you see friends of this woman's or other people who are eyewitnesses saying basically that she was there to engage in obstruction of a legitimate law enforcement operation. How did she get there? How did she learn about this? There's an entire network, and frankly, some of the media are participating in it, that is trying to incite violence against our law enforcement officers. It's ridiculous, it's preposterous, and part of our investigatory work is getting to the bottom of it. Who's funding it? Who's supporting it? Who's cheerleading it? And of course, if there's illegal activity related to that, we're going to get to the bottom of that and prosecute it where we can.
Vice President, thank you for taking questions today. Is there a risk with you describing her as a deranged leftist, talking about very specific facts of these events, when an investigation is just beginning? Are you preempting a thorough investigation by drawing such conclusions? And have you received any information beyond the videos we've seen publicly about this individual, her specific acts, that has informed your point of view?
Well, first of all, the Department of Justice is going to investigate this. The Department of Homeland Security is already investigating this. But the simple fact is, what you see is what you get in this case. You have a woman who was trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. Nobody debates that. You have a woman who aimed her car at a law enforcement officer and pressed on the accelerator. Nobody debates that. I can believe that her death is a tragedy, while also recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making and a tragedy of the far left who has marshaled an entire movement, a lunatic fringe, against our law enforcement officers. I think what is clearly happening here, and it's going to keep on happening unless the Democrats wake up and say, you know what, you don't have to agree with our immigration policies. You don't have to agree with what the president or the vice president believe about immigration enforcement, but why don't you take this to the ballot box? Why don't you vote? Why don't you organize? Instead, what some of them are doing is encouraging people to get violent with our law enforcement officials. It's disgraceful, and it's got to stop.
Just to follow up on that question, and again, thank you for taking questions, Mr. Vice President. There's clearly a lot of emotion in Minnesota, across the country, over this incident. You're calling Renee Good a deranged leftist. There's been heated rhetoric that we've also heard from officials. What responsibility do you and the president have to diffuse some of the tension that we are seeing play out in Minnesota, bring down the temperature as this investigation is unfolding?
What we have a responsibility to do is to protect the people who are enforcing the law and protect the country writ large. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, you deserve to have the people's laws enforced in the United States of America. Now, again, I'm not happy that this woman lost her life. I'm not happy that this woman was there at a protest violating the law by interfering with a law enforcement action. I think that we can all recognize that the best way to turn down the temperature is to tell people to take their concerns about immigration policy to the ballot box. Stop assaulting and stop inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's the best way to take down the temperature. And we're not going to give in to terrorism on this. And that's exactly what's happening. people trying to antagonize, to commit acts of violence. They throw bricks at them. Sometimes they shoot at them. Sometimes they dox them. Sometimes they go to their place of residence and harass their families. This is classic terrorism. And we cannot say that when a far left fringe is inciting violence against our brave law enforcement officials, that we're no longer going to enforce the law. That's rewarding the very people who are engaged in this garbage. The actual reward that they just got is a new assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate this stuff even more aggressively than before. Yeah.
Thanks for taking my question. So the head of Minnesota's investigations agency says that the U.S. Attorney's Office has essentially cut off the state investigations agency's access to the investigation. What is the precedent for that, and why shouldn't the Minnesota officials on the ground have access and evidence to work on this investigation?
First of all, I wish the state officials in Minnesota would investigate why you have so many people who are using their vehicles and other means to actually interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation. The precedent here is very simple. You have a federal law enforcement official engaging in federal law enforcement action. That's a federal issue. That guy is protected by absolute immunity. He was doing his job. The idea that Tim Walz and a bunch of radicals in Minneapolis are going to go after and make this guy's life miserable because he was doing the job that he was asked to do is preposterous. The unprecedented thing is the idea that a local official can actually prosecute a federal official with absolute immunity. I've never seen anything like that. It would get tossed out by a judge. So what I'd like Minnesota to focus on is the real issue, that they're encouraging people. Minneapolis officials are encouraging people to commit violence against ICE officials. It's ridiculous. It's got to stop. Go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you. You said earlier that there's a left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and make it impossible for ICE officers to do their job. You told my colleague just now that there's an investigation going on into that network.
Yep.
So if everything that you say is true, how does being part of that network justify being shot?
Well, being part of the network doesn't justify being shot, but ramming an ICE officer with your car, that's what justifies being shot. It's not a good thing, by the way, but when you force somebody to engage in self-defense, it's almost a preposterous question. I'm not saying that funding some of this stuff justifies capital punishment. Nobody would suggest that. The reason this woman is dead is because she tried to ram somebody with her car and that guy acted in self-defense. That is why she lost her life, and that is the tragedy. Now, there may be other violations of the law and other penalties that are associated with those violations of the law. For example, if you are funding violence against our law enforcement officers, I'm not a prosecutor. My guess is that's not the sort of thing that earns capital punishment, but it should sure as hell earn you a few years in prison if you're funding the effort to try to assault our law enforcement officers. What is, I'm sorry guys, what's going on here? You guys are meant to report the truth. How have you let yourself become agents of propaganda of a radical fringe that's making it harder for us to enforce our laws? You just asked me a question that presumed that the reason why this woman died is because she was engaged in legitimate protest. She tried to run somebody over with her car, and the guy defended himself when that happened. Next question.
The investigation is still ongoing.
I said next question.
Mr. Vice President, I mean, you presumably watched the video yourself. There's not the slightest doubt in your mind, having viewed it, that the victim, you still believe that she deliberately tried to ram him despite seeing this video?
Look, I don't know what is in a person's heart or in a person's head, and obviously we're not going to get the chance to ask this woman what was going on. What I am certain of is that she violated the law. What I'm certain of is that that officer had every reason to think that he was under very serious threat for injury or in fact, his life. What I'm certain of is that she accelerated in a way where she ran into the guy. I don't know what was in her heart and what was in her head, but I know that she violated the law, and I know that officer was acting in self-defense. It raises an interesting point, though. Look, if people want to say that we should have a legitimate debate about, you know, what was she really doing, right? Was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reasonable conversation. What's not reasonable is for so many of you to plaster all over the media that this was an innocent woman and that the ICE agent committed murder, which is what many of you have said explicitly and some of you have said implicitly. That's what I have an objection to. The idea that this was not justified is absurd, and I think everybody knows it in their heart. Yeah.
Mr. Vice President, following up
In the green jacket.
taking down the temperature, it seems like political violence is ratcheting up and riots could be around the corner. What steps does the administration have planned to try to unite America? Average people on both political sides are so tired of fighting with each other, and I think all the journalists in this room could agree with me that we don't want to be part of the problem. Do you have any words to unite America?
You know, I know you don't want to be a part of the problem, and I think that's true of a lot of you. I'm not sure it's true for everybody, because the reporting over this has been one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen in media. I've never seen a case so misrepresented and misreported when you have a guy who was defending himself and is now being treated as some sort of federal assassin by so many of the people in this room. First of all, let me say about crime. You mentioned violence. One of the things we're proudest about is that you saw violent crime over the last year drop by 20%. Why is that drop by 20%? Is it because we're attacking our law enforcement officers, or is it because we in the administration are empowering our law enforcement officers to enforce the law? I think that's one of the ways you take down the temperature, is you make people feel more secure and safe in their person and property. That's why we care so much about protecting our law enforcement, because it accrues to the benefit of the entire national community. I think that we can absolutely talk about the ways in which, you know, we can lower the temperature by discussing differences in a reasonable and rational way. Again, I'm happy to talk with any congressional Democrat or any of you about our immigration policy, about why I think it's necessary, about why I think it's in the best interest of the country, about why the President of the United States was elected to actually enforce the border for the first time in at least 4 years. So here's the problem. That's not the debate so many people are having. They are actively covering for people who are committing acts of violence against federal law enforcement. It is preposterous. The way to take down the temperature is to stop it. Have your debates about policy. Attack me. Attack the President of the United States. Don't attack our law enforcement officers. They are trying to do the job the American people demanded that they do. They are not policy actors. They are enforcing the law. They should be treated with a modicum of dignity and respect. And the fact that they're not is why incidents like yesterday happened. The one final point I'll make about this is, look, there's a part of me that feels very, very sad for this woman, not just because she lost her life, but because I think she is a victim of left-wing ideology. What young mother shows up and decides they're going to throw their car in front of ICE officers who are enforcing legitimate law? You've got to be a little brainwashed to get to that point to where you're willing not just to protest, that's fine, not peacefully protest, but throw your vehicle in front of legitimate law enforcement officers and drive your car into them. To get to that point, you have to be, I think, radicalized in a very, very sad way. I certainly wish that she hadn't got there. I know there's an ICE officer right now who very much wishes he was not put in the position where he had to fire a gun to defend his own life. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. What's your message, following up on that, what's your message to the leaders in Minnesota, the governor of Minnesota, the mayor of Minneapolis, to calm down the situation on the ground, on the streets? What's your message also to those protesters who saw that video in a completely different way than you saw that video?
Well, first of all, I think if you watch every angle of that video, there is one angle where if you squint, you can maybe tell yourself that it's not clear what happened. But when you look at all angles of that video, it is very clear that her vehicle went right for the guy. She actually collided with him. And then that's, of course, when he fired his shots. That's obvious, okay? So what I'd say to the protesters is, by all means, protest peacefully, but make this about ideas. Make this about disagreement with our policy. Don't use your protest as a justification or an encouragement for people to go and incite violence and participate in violence against our law enforcement officials. To the people on the ground in Minneapolis, meaning the local officials in Minneapolis from Tim Walz on down, I'd say, look, why can't you just disagree with a given piece of immigration policy without turning law enforcement into the enemy? And think about, for example, a criminal law, where a police officer goes and arrests somebody because they violated a criminal law. If you're mad about that, go and protest the politician who passed that law. Don't attack the police officer who's just doing their job. We had a wide open border under Joe Biden. I happen to think it's a good thing the President of the United States has closed it down. If you think that's a bad idea, criticize this administration for a policy decision. Don't attack our people for enforcing the law, because I guarantee you go to ICE, there are black people and white people, there are Democrats and Republicans, they are patriotic Americans who are trying to enforce the law. Attack me, lay off of our ICE agents. Yeah, in the blue, all the way, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice President. You've called on Tim Walz to resign. Can you lay out the case as to why he should step down?
Well, look, I think Tim Walz should resign because it's very clear either that he knew about the fraud in Minneapolis, he knew about the welfare fraud, or at the very least he looked the other way. I mean, this is not like Lex Luthor, right? This is not movie villain fraud. This is the lowest IQ possible fraud. This is, we're going to take the absence of kids and set up a daycare center where there are no children, and we're going to call our early childhood education center the Quality Learning Center. By the way, if you can't spell learning, maybe you shouldn't be in early childhood education. But people got rich off of this. We know that there were schools who either had no enrollment or at least they overstated their enrollment. Tim Walz, either it was unbelievable incompetence or he was in on the fraud. That's one of the things we're going to get to the bottom of. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Can you explain the difference between this Associate Attorney General and a special counsel? And do you envision this being a permanent position or having more of a limited scope?
Well, it's going to be permanent until we get to the bottom of what's going on, so I think it's going to last for at least the remainder of the administration. What's different about it from a special counsel is, if you remember, the Jack Smith case where the special counsel was found unconstitutional, one of the big issues there is that that person was not an appointed person, completely aside from all the other issues that the person was a lunatic and that the case had no merit. There was a fundamental constitutional issue, which is that he had not been appointed by the president and he had not been confirmed by the United States Senate. An assistant attorney general, what that's going to allow us to do is appoint this person, have them confirmed by the Senate. That's one difference. The more substantive difference is that this person is going to be part of a very broad interagency White House that's being led from the President of the United States on down. And that's going to give him the resources, the access to material and information to make this person more effective. I think a lot of people have asked, how are you really going to get to the heart of the fraud? We've been asking ourselves that question for the past couple of months, and we think this is the critical piece at the Department of Justice to really ramp this fraud investigation into high gear. In the red tie, yeah.
Vice President Vance, I wanted to ask, what's your message to far leftist agitators who feel emboldened to obstruct ICE activity in Minnesota and around the country?
Well, I think they shouldn't feel emboldened because now they have an assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate their fraud and their violence more aggressively than it has ever been investigated in the United States of America. We are doing so much to try to find the financing networks and the domestic terrorism networks that legitimate this violence, that fund this violence, and that, of course, engage in the violence. These people should not feel emboldened because they have, for the first time, maybe in American history, an administration that is not going to tolerate political violence of any kind from anywhere. Yeah.
We are clear today that the entire weight of the federal government is behind these ICE agents and this ICE agent in particular. There is still a federal investigation happening on the ground. Does that mean that they are not looking into this ICE agent at all? They are just focused on the woman who was in the car? What is the investigation if the federal government has already determined that its weight is behind this ICE investigation?
So what do you mean? When you say investigation, do you mean investigation of the shooting yesterday or of the fraud that's happening in Minneapolis?
Yesterday.
Okay, look, DHS, as I understand it, has an investigation already ongoing. I know that other organs of our government are looking at this. So yes, there's certainly an investigation that's happening right now. But as part of the broader fraud investigation, a lot of what we're doing with the Department of Justice has already started. We've got over 1,500 subpoenas. We've got people this morning, actually. We're going door to door to actually knock on some of these fraudulent care centers, these fraudulent social services organizations to get to the bottom of what's going on there. So the investigation in some ways has already been ramping up into the anti-fraud element for at least a few weeks. What we're trying to do is supercharge it and make sure there's a designated person within the Department of Justice who completely controls that particular focus.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, Mr. Vice President, on the agent, is he still on duty or has he been placed on leave, on administrative leave? And what really was the target of the operation on Wednesday? the ICE operation on Wednesday?
Well, first of all, it was a legitimate law enforcement operation. We were going door to door to try to find criminal illegal aliens and deport them from the United States of America, because if you come to our country illegally in violation of our immigration laws, then we have the mandate, and in fact we have the legal duty to enforce those immigration laws. Whether he's been placed on administrative leave, I don't know the answer to that question. I'd refer it to the Department of Homeland Security and they can follow up. I will say, look, I would appreciate everybody saying a prayer for that agent. Look, in the past 6 months, he has been hit twice by a motor vehicle. One time, the first time, it led to over 30 stitches and very serious injuries to his legs. This is a guy who's actually done a very, very important job for the United States of America. He's been assaulted, he's been attacked, he's been injured because of it. He deserves a debt of gratitude, and I think the media prejudging and talking about this guy as if he's a murderer is one of the most disgraceful things I've ever seen from the American media. Yeah.
Vice President, what is your specific role in the future of Venezuela? And I'm wondering, could you confirm reports that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was kept out of the planning for the operations because of her past concerns about military involvement in Venezuela?
So I've heard a couple of things. One, that I was kept out of the planning for the Venezuela operation, that's false. And another, that Tulsi was kept out of the planning for Venezuela operations, that's completely false. Look, we're all part of the same team. And one of the things that is really amazing about that operation is that we kept it very tight to the senior cabinet level officials and related officials in our government. And we kept this operation secret for a very long time. I'm very proud of that. I think it suggests that the team works very well together. Well, looking ahead, what is my role? Look, my role is going to be whatever the president asks me to do.
Has he asked you to do something yet?
Well, every other day, I'm chairing the meeting that we do on this among White House principals to talk about next steps to try to ensure that Venezuela is stable, and as the president has directed us to do, to ensure that the new Venezuelan government actually listens to the United States and does what the United States needs it to do under our country's best interest. So I'm going to be as involved as the president wants me to be. So far, that's been very involved, and I'll keep on doing that so long as the president asks me to do it. In the purple.
Yes. Even
Mr.
beyond the war powers
Sorry,
resolution.
we'll go purple and then we'll go pink or whatever that is in front.
Royal purple.
And then beige.
All right.
Okay.
Are there any indications, you talked about the network, are there any indications that the lady who was shot, I know there are different reports from there, her wife said they were new to the area. Are there any indications she may have been a paid agitator, and maybe that there are others that were brought to the area, considering everything that's going on in Minneapolis?
I wouldn't say that she was paid. I don't have the evidence to say that one way or the other. What I do know is that she was violating the law, and if you just look at the eyewitness accounts, they were saying she was there to prevent the enforcement of the law. She was trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. That much is obviously clear. The rest of it, of course, is part of the reason why we investigate this stuff. Yeah.
Mr. Vice President, even beyond the war powers resolution today, Congress has bucked President Trump on issues like tariffs. Are you concerned that President Trump is losing his grip on Republicans in the Congress, and what are you going to do about it?
No, I'm not concerned at all. First of all, we talked to some of the senators who were going to vote the wrong way, in my view, on this resolution today. Much of their argument was based more on a legal technicality than any disagreement in policy. If you look at the people who actually voted, every single one of them have supported the administration's plan. Second of all, as the president, I believe himself, has already said, every president, Democrat or Republican, believes the War Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. It's not going to change anything about how we conduct foreign policy over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, and that'll continue to be how we approach things. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Vice President. So we are seeing, regarding Iran, we are seeing the protests in Iran these days. The cities are begging for help from the U.S. and Israel, naming streets in the city after President Trump. It seems there is an opportunity here that may not come again. Will the United States stand by the citizens of Iran? And if Israel decides to strike again the nuclear sites in Iran, is the U.S. expected to take part?
Well, look, we certainly stand by anybody who's engaged in peaceful protest, anybody who's trying to exert their rights for free association and to have their voices heard. Obviously, the Iranian regime has a lot of problems, and as the President of the United States has said, the smartest thing for them to have done, it was true 2 months ago, it's true today, is for them to actually have a real negotiation with the United States about what we need to see when it comes to their nuclear program. I'll let the President speak to what we're going to do in the future, but we certainly stand with anybody across the world, including the Iranian people who are advocating for their rights. I'll take just a couple more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Concerning Venezuela, how would you assure the Caribbean region that they will remain a zone of peace? Because some member states in the region are concerned.
Well, look, the president had a very productive phone call with the president of Colombia yesterday, and we continue to talk at all levels of government with a number of our friends in the Caribbean region. I actually think this is really good for peace in the Caribbean, because when you take away a major source of illegal cartel revenue, which is the cocaine trade, the fentanyl trade, other sources of illicit revenue, you actually remove the power of one of the main destabilizing forces in Latin America and in the Caribbean. I really do think, look, we say it all the time, this is the president of peace. One of the ways that you establish peace in your own hemisphere is to make it clear that the United States is going to be respected, that the United States is willing to take power away from criminal cartel organizations and give it to legitimate governments. That's how we see the future of the Western Hemisphere, and we think it's going to be much more peaceful than it was certainly under Joe Biden. I'll take one more question. Go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. On Greenland, do you have a message for European leaders? Many in Europe reject the idea that the island could be for sale.
Well, first of all, Secretary Rubio, I believe, is meeting with the leaders of Denmark and Greenland next week, I want to say it is, but maybe it's the week after that. We'll continue to deliver some of these messages in private, some of them in public, but I guess my advice to European leaders and anybody else would be to take the President of the United States seriously. What has he said about Greenland? Set to the side the crazy overreactions that I've seen from the press and from certain people in Europe. What has the President said? Number one, Greenland is really important, not just to America's missile defense, but to the world's missile defense. Number two, we know that there are hostile adversaries that have shown a lot of interest in that particular territory, that particular slice of the world. So what we're asking our European friends to do is to take the security of that landmass more seriously, because if they're not, the United States is going to have to do something about it. What that is, I'll leave that to the President as we continue to engage in diplomacy with our European friends and everybody on this particular topic. And again, thank you all for listening. Thanks for taking questions. And I just ask you, look, this is politics, and often Republicans and get in arguments with the press about things, and I understand that. I think it's really irresponsible for you guys to go out there and imply or tell the American people that a guy who defended himself from being rammed by an automobile is guilty of murder. Be a little bit more careful. We're going to talk about toning down the temperature, which I know the President wants to do, and I certainly want to do. One of the ways we tone down the temperature is to have a media that tells the truth. I encourage you all to do that. God bless you. Happy New Year, guys.
Hang on, we're waiting for the press secretary. Where's the press secretary? Where's Carolyn Levitt? Did she leave? Wait, I'm confused. I think Carolyn Levitt will come back. That's not the end of the briefing, is it? Huh, that's interesting. I mean, usually what they would do is they would have him come in and then she would take questions. I mean, I'm glad that we got to hear from Vice President Vance. I'm surprised that the briefing ended. Let me, real quick, I want to take some comments from you guys. There is a Minneapolis community briefing going on. Let me show you this from Minneapolis. Community Leaders Press Conference. Hey, it's community leaders in Minneapolis. Hold on a second. Let's check this out. I don't even know what this is.
Because Minneapolis public schools are closed for the day and for the rest of the week. Because students, families, and staff do not feel safe going to school. Shame! Shame! We stand in full solidarity with the immigrant community in Minneapolis and with all who are patrolling the streets to keep our neighborhoods safe and fighting back against ICE terror. We demand justice for Renee Good. This includes the immediate arrest of the killer ICE agent, the immediate release of his identity to the public. We demand a real sanctuary policy in all of Minnesota that prohibits any local law enforcement or city or state officials from working with ICE at every level of Minnesota government, including the city, county, and state. Yes. Yes. And we demand ICE out of Minnesota and legalization for all. Yes. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Alvin Shang with the Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee. Woo-hoo.
We'll watch a little of this, see what it is. We'll have to see. Hold on.
My name is Alvin Sheng, and that's ALVIN SHENG, and I'm a member of the Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee, MIRAC. The previous Sunday, the Trump administration deployed 2,000 ICE agents to Minneapolis as part of a targeted attack on our Somali and Latine communities. Kristi Noem and Gregory Bovino themselves visited the Twin Cities accompanied by a parade of militarized agents and vehicles to manufacture xenophobic propaganda against our community. However, we will not be cowed into giving up our civil rights in the face of this aggression. This was a follow-up to the so-called Operation Metro Surge, which started in December of last year, where ICE agents started prowling our neighborhoods and kidnapping our immigrant neighbors with a much higher intensity than before. This was the moment that spontaneous rapid response networks and those organized by MIRAC, Immigrant Defense Network, and Monarca kicked into high gear. The people participating in these networks have been heroic. We should keep up the effort, but also remember to remain as united as possible by following the St. Paul principles and put the impacted immigrants' needs first. I want to take a moment to recognize that it is a scary time. Our neighbors are being kidnapped off the streets as we speak. However, the response to this should not be isolating ourselves, but leaning even more on our community. Yesterday, a 37-year-old constitutional observer, Renee Nicole Good, was shot and killed by ICE agents while driving away when they were conducting a raid in South Minneapolis. In the wake of Renee's murder, 10,000 people showed up on Portland Avenue to express their grief and commitment to stand up for their immigrant neighbors. This is in addition to the vigils and protests that have erupted across the country, many of which were organized by the chapters of the Legalization for All network. Rest in peace, Renee Nicole Good. Thank you for standing up for our immigrant neighbors. We absolutely have the numbers. The more we show up for each other, the safer all of us will be. So get trained, get organized, and show up for each other. Who keeps us safe?
We keep us safe.
That's right. It's not the police nor Walz's National Guard, but ultimately us, the community, that keeps us safe. This is illustrated by the recent passage of a stronger sanctuary city ordinance in Minneapolis, which was only possible through the grassroots efforts of MIRAC and immigrant rights allies. To maintain our momentum, please join us at the rally and march this Saturday at 1 p.m. at the northwest corner of Powderhorn Park, where we'll celebrate our victory and hold our Minneapolis leaders accountable to the stronger separation ordinance. When immigrant rights are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Damn right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jay Yates with the Twin Cities Coalition for Justice.
My name is Jay. I'm with the Twin Cities Coalition for Justice, a Black and queer-led organization fighting in solidarity against police brutality and stands in solidarity with all struggles for liberation. We are a branch of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression and the People's Action Coalition Against Trump. First, I want to say that on behalf of everyone in TCC4J, I offer my sincerest condolences to Renee Good's wife, children, and remaining family. She represents the core of what makes us human, the instinct to stand up for her neighbors and offer everything she could in the name of justice. She was killed because she knew what ICE is doing to our immigrant communities is wrong and had joined thousands of people exercising their legal right to film and observe law enforcement. We will never forget her or her sacrifice. But we must also not forget that her death is not the first murder ICE has on its hands. 32 people have died in ICE custody just in 2025, and 2/3 of the 1,800 detainees held at the Alligator Alcatraz concentration camp are still missing. Keith Porter, a Black California resident, was murdered by an off-duty ICE agent on New Year's Eve, less than a week prior to them killing Renee. His murder, too, was justified by a false narrative pushed by DHS that the officer who killed him feared for his life, a narrative contradicted by eyewitnesses. Miramar Martinez, who also was legally observing ICE in Chicago, was shot 5 times by ICE agent Charles Exum, who bragged that he'd fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. Miramar luckily survived and defeated her charges of domestic terrorism, but 2025 was yet again a year with well over 1,200 deaths at the hands of law enforcement nationwide, and there were only 6 days the entire year that police didn't kill anyone. Here in our city, our police force has its own long, bloody history of murdering Black and Indigenous people and justifying it after the fact by saying they feared for their lives. Minneapolis Police Department lied about George Floyd being on drugs to shield Derek Chauvin from responsibility for his torturously slow death. Philando Castile was murdered in his car with his girlfriend and child present. Jamar Clark's killers lied and said he was a domestic violence suspect that reached for their gun despite him being handcuffed when he was shot. Amir Locke was asleep and they killed him within seconds of entering his apartment because they thought that he had a gun. His killer, Mark Hanneman, not only faced 0 consequences, he got a promotion. These deaths were just as wrong as Renee's. We must understand Renee's murder not as an isolated tragedy, but a link in a long chain of brutality that Black, Indigenous, and Latino communities especially have borne the brunt of. Until we accept the reality that law enforcement, whether it's DHS, ICE, FBI, or local police, have and will fabricate justifications for the murder of anyone they feel threatened by, we will not end the violence of this system. Until we accept that the foundations of law enforcement in this country are racist, that the laws and practices of these organizations began with Jim Crow and the expulsion of Native peoples from their land, we cannot end the violence of this system. Change begins with honesty. The honest truth is that we are paying for the boot on our necks. Our taxes pay for the bullets that kill our neighbors. They cannot exist without us, and yet we have no say in what they do in our neighborhoods. Ending this cycle of violence and inaction only happens if we take control and win real power over the structures that govern our lives. We must demand independent, democratic civilian oversight of all law enforcement, including the Minneapolis Police Department. We owe it to the people who we've lost and the people who still have justice denied to them. We need community control, and we will not stop until every killer cop and agent pays for their crimes. TCC4J joins the community's demands to release the names of the ICE agent who murdered our sister, prosecute, and jail him. And we join people across the country demanding that ICE get the hell out of our cities right now. Justice for Renee Good. Justice for Renee Good and all stolen lives. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Natasha Doctor, the Vice President of the Teacher Chapter of the Minneapolis Federation of Educators.
Good afternoon. My name is Natasha Doctor, and I am the Vice President of the Minneapolis Federation of Educators, and we are proud to be here today with MIRAC, a critical community organization. Yesterday was a horrific day in our community because of the continued attack by federal immigration enforcement and the murder of an observer, Renee Good, a neighbor looking out for our community. Additionally, we saw the reckless and lawless nature of immigration enforcement when they came onto school grounds, deployed tear gas, and detained an educator who was doing their job at dismissal, a critical process that all schools do every day. Their actions yesterday strengthen our resolve as educators that federal immigration enforcement is not welcome in our city. And as educators and union members, we continue to demand that ICE leave our city. Our students and families deserve to be able to safely exercise their constitutional right to a public education. We keep us safe.
right. Our next speaker is Andrew Josephchek with the Minnesota Anti-War Committee.
My name is Andrew Josephchek, AndrewJosephchak. I'm a member of the Minnesota Anti-War Committee, which is a member of the People's Action Coalition against Trump. I've been to 2 emergency protests in the last week, one in response to the Trump administration's criminal bombing of Venezuela's capital and the illegal kidnapping of President Nicolas Maduro. The second in response to ICE's summary execution of Renee Good in South Minneapolis yesterday. While there may not seem to be an immediate causal connection between the 2 events, they in fact are connected because they are both reflections of one and the same policy, U.S. imperialism, a policy of exploitation of the world's people at gunpoint for the benefit of the rich. ICE terror is only an escalation of an existing situation. U.S. immigrants are being driven by U.S. laws and police into a state of desperation where they're forced to work the worst jobs for the worst pay with no legal protections and no social safety net. Trump himself has already made it clear he doesn't actually plan to deport most immigrants working in agriculture or meat packing or other dangerous, illegally underpaid jobs that rely on workers who don't have a choice, who understand that their boss could have them separated from their children at any time. What the Trump administration wants is for these people to know their place, the same way it has said that Venezuela must stay in line or face more bombings. Many immigrants come here from places like Venezuela, countries that have been subjected to devastating economic sanctions and U.S.-backed coup attempts. And while the Anti-War Committee entirely unites with MIRAC's demand for legalization for all, we believe that immigration should be a choice. It shouldn't be something that is necessitated by the fear of death or starvation. I myself have traveled through Venezuela on an international solidarity delegation, and I can tell you that what you're hearing in the media about the country, its people, and its government is as obvious a lie as Trump's claim that the man we all watched murder Renee Good yesterday on clear as day video was hit by her car and is in the hospital in critical condition. The Trump administration does not want us to believe our own eyes. In Venezuela, I saw a country that is determined to use its natural wealth to provide for all its people and not just the wealthy. I saw free healthcare programs and food distribution programs. I saw massive housing developments. I met peasant cooperatives who had been given land that had been stripped from wealthy landowners and given to them so they could use it to feed themselves and their country. I met person after person who told me how much better life had gotten since Venezuela kicked the U.S. and its oil corporations out. People who can stand up for themselves, who live free of terror, are difficult to exploit. The whole people of Venezuela have been painted with the brush of narco-terrorist for standing up for their own country, a word that has been used to justify summarily executing fishermen in the Caribbean in the same way domestic terrorist was used to justify the execution of Renee Good, who was standing up for justice and against terror right here in Minneapolis. U.S. imperialism has really come home to roost, and I want to end by reminding people of the real meaning of the word solidarity. It doesn't just mean standing up for someone else. It means that by standing up for someone else, you're standing up for yourself. It's time for everyone in the U.S. who has an interest in fighting U.S. imperialism to hit the streets, and I believe that's just about everybody in this country. ICE out of Minneapolis, long live international solidarity, venceremos.
Our next speaker is Alyssa Washington.
All right, I wanted to show some of that. You know, we haven't, we saw JD Vance speak. We haven't seen yet also, and I want to let you see that. We have not actually seen what Kristi Noem said. Kristi Noem spoke shortly before right before JD Vance, we heard from Governor Walz of Minnesota. Shortly before that, Kristi Noem spoke, and I wanted to show you what she took some questions about this. Oops, the headline's all wrong. So she took some questions. So I want to see what Kristi Noem had to say, the Department of Homeland Security head. Let me real quick just hold on. I need to fix, we don't need the clock up there anymore. And obviously, we are no longer on the community leaders briefing. But I also want to mention to you something else that I saw before we look at Kristi Noem and thank a couple people. I did see this that I wanted to mention. Hang on, one moment. So NetBlocks, which specializes in basically news about internet stoppages and blockages by governments, internet shutdowns, is what they specialize in reporting on. NetBlocks is reporting that Iran is now in the midst of a nationwide internet blackout. The incident follows a series of escalating digital censorship measures targeting protests across the country and hinders the public's right to communicate at a critical moment. So there have been protests going on in recent days in Iran. So, couple thoughts. This could be an attempt to prevent protesters from organizing. I've seen some speculation that perhaps they're planning a more violent crackdown, and that would be a reason to want to cut the internet. But again, NetBlocks is reporting that Iran is now in the midst of a nationwide internet blackout. The incident follows a series of escalating digital censorship measures targeting protests across the country. But this is apparently a nationwide internet blackout. So, I want to let you know about this. We'll keep an eye on this. Kind of hard to really get a great feeling for what exactly is going on with Iran. You don't really see live streams out of there. It's known for not having press freedom there. And you don't really have an independent media, large news channels not controlled by the government reporting stuff. So I'll keep an eye on things. I did want to let you know that is happening as well. And one of our viewers said Starlink, so I don't know what access people have there to that. I don't even know that it works in Iran. But again, I don't see live streams coming out of Iran, which is the usual that you don't see live streams coming out of Iran. But so hard to tell exactly what's going on there, but that's new today. Okay. So, and I did want to take a look at, so we'll keep an eye on that. And I want to show you guys what Kristi Noem had to say. Because she spoke a short while ago and we didn't get a chance to see that. Quick thanks, by the way. Quick thank you to, so we're going to look at that now. Confidence in God, Crazy Yoda, I Am Charlie, the Mizzou, thanks for your support, Neo Trips, and Auntie the Hun, Andrew Koski, Old Boy Pona, Heavenly Intervention, the Al Burp, Leet Wheat, Manjoalini, Fake Garbage Ben, X-File, Jack Russell, Scotsman, Obey Banksy, Chill Paste, Future, Aero Bliss, Pristine Auto Detailing, West, PA Jeeper, Jason D in California, Barbs, Mr. DKB, Spicy Tuna Roll, Zine Door, Bill Jack, Rita, Iroquois, and Bob Byrne, Spicy Tuna Roll, and Granite Man, the Scaled One, Eclipse Chris, City Skylines, couple more here. Cool Stuff, Kinjiru, James Gorman, Frodo Baggins, Anna Maria, Mike Rivers, Content, Sean Ryder, Chocolate Angel, The light true crime. Hopefully I'm getting everybody. NVIX Media, Say Rah Rah, AW, Ben in Kentucky, and also Crazy, I said Crazy Yuta, thanks Crazy Yuta, and Eliza Jane. And also my Crystal Clear Life on Twitch, Who Shot JR on Twitch, Michael Clayton on Facebook, IXIOO on Twitch, Who Shot, and CC, and Guy from the 207, and Skolaway, I got behind on Twitch, by the way. Tech Slug, thank you. And all right, so let's look at the Kristi Noem video. I haven't even had a chance to watch this yet, but I have it right here. I'm gonna play it for you when she took questions about the ICE shooting. We don't have to watch the whole broadcast. I'm just going to talk. I'm going to look at the part where she talked about the ICE shooting. Okay, now hang on a second here. I'm putting it on, getting it up on the screen for you right now. Okay, so here it is. Now I got to put earlier today up here, so people don't think it's live. So the press conference was about something else, but she took questions and she talked about the ICE shooting. Oh, and shout out to our moderators. Shout out to our moderators. We have moderating right now. Ruth is moderating. Janet B is moderating. Thank you so much. And this, I think, is where she starts taking questions right at the end here. So we'll play from here. Thanks also for moderating over on Twitch. Big Ball of Yarn, David Green, I got that fired. Matthew Kohai 3, Papa Bear, and Surly Dev. Thank you. Also, Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley, moderating on Facebook. Also, any moderators I'm missing. Hey, thanks Diane Allworth for subscribing over there. Sharon Klassen Goslin, Christy Claft, thank you. Linda Belk, Larry, and Misha on X. All right, so let's listen to what, again, I haven't even listened to this. This was earlier. Oops, it doesn't say earlier because you can't see that, but it will say earlier in a second. So this was a short while ago. Ooh, I see where it is. A short while ago, before Governor Walz spoke, and this is Kristi Noem taking some questions. Hopefully we can hear the questions. Let's see how this goes. I'll play it and we'll see what we can hear.
Charges or criminal convictions. And I'm wondering, ICE's own data in New York City shows that over the last year, between January and October, 70% of the arrests that ICE did in New York City had no criminal convictions or pending charges. Should New Yorkers expect that trend to change? That's higher than the nationwide average.
If you look across the nationwide average, we have 70% of the individuals that we've arrested and detained have criminal convictions or charges against them, either in this country or other. We're continuing to do our work to bring those criminal illegal aliens to justice, and ICE will continue to get up every day and do what they can to protect New York City. I can have Frank or Ken speak to if you know how many criminal convictions of the 54 had previous to this arrest that they had. I don't know if you have those data points with you. We can get those for you, though. Exactly. The vast majority of them, though, have criminal charges against them or convictions against them as well. Yes.
Where people from, were they all part of the Trinitarios? And what's their immigration status?
Again, loosely affiliated to the Trinitarios. I want to make that clear.
I want to get to the part where she answers questions about the where she answers parts about the ICE shooting. So just give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second. Forward this. Oh, there she comes back. Okay.
Protests and armored vehicles rolling
here we
down
go.
Wall Street.
They just knew
someone who
I don't
was
think
in
it's
the
it
gang.
yet, but
They
we'll
were not
see.
members, but
It varies. It varies spectrum from speaking to individuals associated with the gang to just having conversations.
In October, we saw mass protests and armored vehicles rolling down Canal Street. How do we ensure that we don't see another situation like what happened yesterday here in Manhattan?
What I would encourage everyone to do, and especially your elected officials, is to bring everybody together, to talk about partnerships and start working with ICE and start working with CBP as we bring criminals to justice. And many times your policies and the rhetoric coming out of elected officials has divided people and pitted them against each other. Our job every day, and what President Trump promised to do, was to protect every single American, no matter where they lived in this country, that he was going to make sure that we weren't going to have more victims in this country. And we are going to continue to do that each and every day. And I'd encourage the leaders in this city and your governor and in other cities and states across this country to work with us rather than opposing us so that we can continue to make our streets safer. Yes, right here. Hi.
This is not the only example, the one that you bring up today, of officers being attacked by alleged gang members in New York City. We also had those officers who were attacked in Times Square back in May. With these examples, has Mayor Mamdani and his administration offered to cooperate when it comes to getting criminal gang members off the streets? Because we know he is not a fan of ICE, but when it comes to criminal gangs, is there any kind of leeway that has been given that?
You know, we're hoping the mayor will work with us to get these criminal elements and especially gang members and terrorist organizations out of New York City. I know he and the president had a productive conversation. Our communication at the Department of Homeland Security has not been productive with the mayor's office or with NYPD, but we want to continue those conversations so we can work together. Yes.
Director Russo spoke about how this operation happened discreetly under the cover of darkness, and that's how it should be, which is in contrast to what happened in Minneapolis yesterday. You said
what do you mean in contrast to
that
what
was
happened?
very much not undercover
because of the
darkness.
protesters and the violent
Well, so
criminals
my
that were
question for
attacking
you
our
is,
law enforcement.
you
If you
had said-
remember in that operation, what happened was our officers were out trying to get a car stuck out of the snow when they were surrounded and assaulted and blocked in by protesters that were inciting.
The officer was following his training.
He
I'm
did follow his
wondering,
training
does
because of an
firing two
individual
shots
that was
point blank into a driver's window. Is that part of the training? How is that self-defense?
This is an experienced officer who followed his training, and we will continue to let the investigation unfold into the individual and continue to follow the procedures and policies that happen in these use of force cases. But let's remember the events that surrounded what happened yesterday on that tragic situation was that these individuals had followed our officers all day, had harassed them, had blocked them in. They were impeding our law enforcement operations, which is against the law. And when they demanded and commanded her to get out of her vehicle several times, she did not. So we'll continue to allow this process to unfold and recognize that these law enforcement officers every single day put their lives on the line. They go out and do their jobs. They go out and
Terrorist, though, without an
this was an act
investigation.
of domestic terrorism,
There
which
had
is
been no
perpetuating
investigation into who she was or what she was about, and yet now you're saying
these
you can't
policies
speak
and
about the incident
procedures that
because of
follow a use of force situation like this are continuing to be put in place. So this is standard operating procedure after every use of force situation is that we follow these procedures and protocols. This situation is no different. Back there. Nope, this young lady right beside you. I'll come to you next.
Thank you so much. Should we expect a surge of agents in New York City, and if so, when?
I would say that President Trump and his administration are focused on protecting people. So we will never telegraph exactly the numbers and operations that we have and where we will be focused on. But I think that when you see violent criminals that are taking advantage of American citizens and putting their lives in jeopardy, our law enforcement officers at DHS will always show up. Yes. I'll come back. I'll come back. Go ahead.
Secretary, the officer involved in the shooting yesterday, has he been suspended or is he still in the field?
The officer went to the hospital. He was hit by the vehicle, went to the hospital and received treatment, was released and is spending time with his family now.
And is he still
Yes, sir.
Yes. In Minneapolis yesterday, you said the surge there would continue. While you didn't directly say whether we can expect an ICE surge for civil deportation enforcement, can you explain what a surge is and
I won't describe in detail our law enforcement operations that we have. It's just puts our officers' lives in jeopardy, but they will be there enforcing the laws of this country and upholding the public safety needs that have to happen when it comes to enforcing federal law.
Homeland Security investigations.
You know, we've got thousands of officers there, and I'm not opposed to sending more if necessary to keep people safe.
Secretary, no. Secretary, no.
Back up here.
Secretary, can you talk a little bit about the experience of the officer and some of his background? How much training did he have? How much training in these types of situations did he have, even if he's from the region?
Yeah, I'm not going to get specific to this officer, but he's an experienced officer that has served a number of years, and we recognize that he acted according to his training, and we have expect that all the policies and procedures of review will be exactly that he acted appropriately to protect his life and the life of his colleagues and fellow law enforcement officers that were there and people that were surrounding.
Yes. I'd like to get your reaction on some of the rhetoric here in New York City. Mayor Zohran Mamdani responded to the shooting yesterday, saying that this is only the latest horror in a year full of cruelty. He called it an attack on us all, and that New York stands with immigrants today and every day. Also, council members last night at the protest called this fascism. The New York City's public advocate, Jumaane Williams, said that your administration is, quote, doing the devil's work, and he asked New York City to stand up and show up, quote, it's going to be difficult and there are going to be casualties. And the last comment that was made last night at the protest was from New York State Representative Alex Boros, also a Democrat. Quote, not only was the ICE agent's hand on the gun, but Secretary Noem's hand was on the gun. President Trump's hand was on the gun. What is your response to New York Democratic leaders, those particular comments, and the protesters that are outside?
I would say those comments are why we're standing where we are today. That kind of language and that kind of provocative talk, inciting people to take action and perpetuate violence in some cases, is unacceptable, and especially of elected leaders. We have a responsibility to state the facts, to go out and enforce the law. Your mayor just said in that statement that he was going to stand with illegal people who have broken our law before he's going to put New York City citizens first. His job and why he was elected was to protect the people who live here, that had the opportunity to vote for him and have the opportunity to live in this city. They pay their taxes, they go to work every day, and instead the mayor in that statement chose to stand with illegals instead of those individuals who just want the chance to raise their families in New York City and have a part of the American dream. Yes.
The head of Minnesota State Investigations Agency said that they had been cut out of the investigation into the fatal shooting in Minneapolis. Can you explain that reversal?
I'd like to know where they've been and why they're not out on the streets investigating all of these people that are harassing and inciting violence on law enforcement officers right now. They're allowing this situation to be volatile. They're not doing their work. They haven't for years, and maybe they should get to work a little bit on the unprecedented fraud that we've seen in Minnesota and in Minneapolis by people that stole from American citizens and diverted funds away from vulnerable people and programs and services that they needed and put it into their own pockets. Minnesota is a train wreck. It is corrupt, and it was under the leadership of Governor Walz and this mayor that they allowed it to happen, and they let criminals and illegals and people abuse programs and steal the money, and now they're allowing violence to go forward on the streets as well.
County sheriffs, the federal authorities at this point, they don't want.
I won't put a blanket statement out like those other individuals will. What I would say is I welcome them to come and help us. Come help us make sure that the streets are safe, that laws are enforced, and that we can do the right thing to make sure that American citizens come first. Yes, sir. They have not been cut out. They don't have any jurisdiction in this investigation. Yes, go ahead.
Could you give us some more
I'm going to speak to this individual right
Thank
here.
you, Secretary.
Yes.
Jay Dow from WPIX TV. How do you respond to Americans who have been listening to your comments that this was an act of domestic terrorism, that the officer was hit
Anytime
by the
you
vehicle,
take
and say
something,
that it is in direct contradiction to what they are seeing and watching in the multiple angles that have been released in
What
the
I
last
would
24 hours?
This vehicle was used to hit this officer. It was used as a weapon, and the officer feels as though his life was in jeopardy. It was used to perpetuate a violent act that this officer took action to protect himself and to protect his fellow law enforcement officers. So we'll let this continue to go forward and follow the same policies and procedures that every use of force situation does. But we've had almost over 100 times that these vehicles have been used to ram law enforcement officers and to do damage and to harm them. When you take an action and use a weapon to harm someone and to incite violence against them and try to cause them injury or death, then it needs to be labeled exactly what it was.
Do you believe the use of force in this instance was commensurate with the actions of that vehicle and the driver?
I would say that when these individuals use their vehicles to try to ram our law enforcement and to put their lives in jeopardy, that law enforcement officer has to make a decision to protect his life and the individuals around him as well. Yes.
What did you make of Tom Homan's comments yesterday that we should wait for an investigation before determining, as you have, that in this incident it was self-defense and that he felt that his life was in danger?
You know, I didn't see those comments, but from what I understand, he also put out a statement later as well. So I'll let Tom speak to that. But all of us are on the same page in the fact that this law enforcement officer followed his training and that he defended and acted in defense of his life and those around him. Yes.
ABC7 New York. Two quick questions. First, you said these protesters had been following the ICE agents. Do you have a little bit more of a timeline and can you share with us some of those other initial encounters prior to the fatal shooting? And then secondly, can you speak to the closure of the ICE office at Rikers by Mayor Mamdani?
There will be more details coming out as this goes forward in the coming days. And I'll talk more about that closure in the future. Yep.
They had been threatened, like how many other times they
It had been ongoing throughout the day. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Whatever happened in Minneapolis, a mother of three is dead, an American citizen. Do you have a message for her family today?
Yes, absolutely. And I reiterated this yesterday when I had my press conference in Minneapolis. I asked everybody not to just pray for the officer, but also pray for the deceased family and her loved ones as well. It was a tragic situation that I hope we never see happen again. That's why I'm encouraging all elected leaders to work together so that we can be cooperative in getting dangerous criminals off of our streets.
You go in with a lot of publicity about these operations. Do you feel like that needs to be revisited so that maybe you go in a little more covertly, or do you need to change the approach at all?
I would say that we have all different kinds of law enforcement operations ongoing with the department at all times. We don't telegraph what they are, the details or specifics, or where we're going to be operating. I would say that there's different tactics utilized for what's appropriate for the situation and the criminal activity we see in the city. Last question?
Do you know the details of Renee Good's harassment of ICE officers early in the day? Were any of those details shared with you? Because apparently it wasn't just that one incident, it was earlier in the day as well.
Yes, it was, and that will be a part of some of the details that we will be sharing in the future. Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and I appreciate you focusing on this operation and the 54 criminals that we have gotten off the streets because of the work of this team behind me. We thank all of them for their service and recognize that, again, I'll remind you, tomorrow is Law Enforcement Day. Please take the time to thank a law enforcement officer who's out there keeping us and our family safe. Have a wonderful day.
All right, so that was Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, earlier today. So both her and JD Vance have come out today and said that they have blamed the person who was killed. They said they have defended the officer, and they have made their judgment about what happened. There is a federal investigation that is going to happen, but they made their judgment about what happened. Quick update on the investigation here, just so you can see. Mentioned this earlier. This is from the state authorities, Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. They released this statement. They said yesterday, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension was notified that ICE personnel were involved in a shooting in Minneapolis that resulted in a woman's death. that morning, after the shooting, after consultation with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the FBI, it was decided that the state BCA Force Investigations Unit would conduct a joint investigation with the federal investigators, the FBI. The BCA responded promptly to the scene and began coordinating investigative work in good faith. Later that afternoon, the FBI informed the state's investigators, the BCA, that the U.S. Attorney's Office had reversed course. The investigation would now be led solely by the FBI, and the BCA would no longer have access to the case materials, scene evidence, or investigative interviews necessary to complete a thorough and independent investigation. Without complete access to the evidence, witnesses, and information collected, we cannot meet the investigative standards that Minnesota law and the public demands. As a result, the BCA has reluctantly withdrawn from the investigation. The BCA Force Investigations Unit was designed to ensure consistency, accountability, and public confidence, none of which can be achieved without full cooperation and jurisdictional clarity. They say the BCA Force Investigations Unit was created in 2020 by the legislature to provide an independent, consistent, and trusted mechanism for investigating use of force incidents involving law enforcement officers. They said, we expect the FBI to conduct a thorough and complete investigation and that the full investigative file will be shared with the appropriate prosecutorial authorities at both the state and federal levels. If the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI were to reconsider this approach and express a willingness to resume a joint investigation, the BCA is prepared to re-engage in support of our shared goal of public safety in Minnesota. So they say they were originally working on this, and then then they were told they weren't going to work on it. They weren't allowed to work on it, and you heard Governor Walz, who we heard early, was quite upset about this, that the state was not being allowed to be involved in the investigation. Let's see. By the way, thanks to I Am Charlie. I appreciate it. I Am Charlie, thank you. Thanks for your support. I Am Charlie. Hey, I want to give you an update, too, because there are reports now identifying the ICE agent who was involved in the shooting, who shot the woman in the car. So that is being reported now. So I want to mention that. Our viewer, I Am Charlie, thinks that the ICE agent, pulled his gun when she started moving the car forward into his body, and it was self-defense. We have all kinds of opinions in our chat about this. Our viewers are certainly divided and feel differently, have a lot of different views on what happened yesterday. Let me show you this update about the ICE agent. Hang on a moment. The Star Tribune has identified the Minnesota Star Tribune has identified the ICE agent as Jonathan Ross. And they say Jonathan Ross was dragged in a separate incident last year by a fleeing driver. You know, it was interesting. JD Vance, when he spoke today, JD Vance said that this ICE agent who shot the woman in the car had been, in the last 6 months, there had been another incident in which he was dragged by the car. And JD Vance said that this agent would be, he said that this agent would be sensitive to this happening again because it had happened before. Now, one or more of our viewers were asking in the chat, well, would that be a reason to not have the agent in such a situation again? I don't know. But again, his name is Jonathan Ross, according to the Minnesota Star Tribune. And they say that on June 17th of last year, Ross was participating in arrest of a Mexican citizen in Bloomington. I assume it's Bloomington, Indiana. The person who they were going after ignored the agent's commands, including to fully roll down his car window. So Ross broke open the rear window and reached inside to unlock the door. And then the driver accelerated, put the car into drive and started accelerating. And Ross was dragged alongside the vehicle and twice fired his taser. And then about 300 feet down the road, Ross was knocked from the car and had to get 20 stitches, had to get 33 stitches total. And a jury convicted that driver, a Mexican citizen, of assaulting a federal officer. Oh, was it Bloomington, Minnesota? Okay, maybe one of our viewers said it was Bloomington, Minnesota. I have the press release about it right here. I have a couple press releases about it. It was Bloomington, Minnesota. Yes, it was. It was. So this incident right here. You can see this is a press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office, but it talks about the incident. It says, on June 17th, 2025, law enforcement officers attempted to arrest Roberto Carlos Munoz Guatemala, a convicted sex offender, on an immigration order. Agents made a traffic stop of him. The defendant was uncooperative and refused to follow directions. After warning him several times, an agent, apparently this according to the Minnesota Star Tribune, this agent is the same person who shot the woman yesterday. An agent broke the back window so he could open the vehicle from the inside. The driver then accelerated his car. As he sped away, the agent's arm became trapped between the seat and the car frame. The driver dragged the federal agent more than 100 yards while weaving back and forth in an attempt to shake the agent from the car. The agent was eventually jarred free from the car but suffered significant injuries to his arms and hand. Okay? So that's the same person. Jonathan Ross. Hang on a moment here. Hang on a moment here. I want to just post this. So according to the Minnesota Star Tribune, the ICE agent who shot the woman in the car yesterday is the same agent as the agent dragged by a car in this incident in June. Okay, according to the Minnesota Star Tribune, the ICE agent who shot the woman in Minneapolis yesterday is the same agent as the agent dragged by a car in this and injured, dragged by a car and injured in this incident in June of 2025. Okay, I'm going to show you that again, just so you can see it again. But they say his name is Jonathan Ross. Again, so just to clarify, the Minnesota Star Tribune is saying that the ICE agent's name is Jonathan Ross, and that the ICE agent is the same agent who was dragged by a car and injured in this incident, which you can see, this is a U.S. Attorney's Office press release from December. And it says, on June 17th of last year, law enforcement officers attempted to arrest Roberto Carlos Munoz Guatemala, a convicted sex offender on an immigration order. Agents made a traffic stop of Munoz Guatemala. The defendant was uncooperative and refused to follow directions. After warning Munoz Guatemala several times, an agent broke the back window so that he can open the vehicle from the inside. Munoz Guatemala then accelerated his car. As he sped away, the agent's arm became trapped between the seat and the car frame. Munoz Guatemala dragged the federal agent for more than 100 yards while weaving back and forth in an attempt to shake the agent from the car. The agent eventually jarred free from the car but suffered significant injuries to his arms and hand. So that, according to the Minnesota Star Tribune, that agent is the same agent who did the shooting yesterday. Okay, so again, that is reporting the original report about whose name, it's now on the Minnesota Star Tribune website, and I have seen other outlets report it as well. Yeah, I mean, Fox 5 NY reported it. Fox 9, I believe, reported it. This is being widely reported right now, this name. Yeah, Fox 9, the Fox outlet in Minnesota, has it posted on their social media. So this is not some secret story at this point. This is being widely reported. Yeah, Fox 9 posted it on their Facebook page. So. Hey, guys, really quick. I just want to say something really quick. So we did an update about Iran a short while ago. We're covering this right now. I will keep an eye on Iran. Maybe we'll do a stream about it. I would just ask you, I know sometimes it comes from a good place, but I do get some of people ordering me around and saying, do this, cover this, leave this, quit this, stop showing this. Please don't make those kind of comments. I love reading the chat. I love reading your comments, but it's not a fun experience being yelled at and ordered around. So please just, if you can, if you want, write to me on X, make suggestions. I love hearing your suggestions. Send me news updates. But if we could kind of cool it on the ordering me around, I would appreciate it, because I don't want to get upset. But it's been happening a lot today. A lot. So, you know, I hope you understand. Thanks for your understanding. It's happening a little too often. Okay, so anyways, again, big news in this story. The ICE agent has been identified as Jonathan Ross, the same ICE agent who in an incident in June of last year got dragged by a car over 100 yards and suffered significant injuries in that incident. Now, I do think, look, I have no idea what procedure is. There will certainly be questions raised about, if is someone who was in that situation. JD Vance used the word. He said that person would be sensitive to something like this happening again. Does that impact how a person would react in any kind of similar situation? I don't know. I have no idea. Thanks, Godzilla. Now, Godzilla says, sounds like to me the agent had not had proper training and has been constantly putting himself in danger. Now, I can't speak to this. I don't know. I can understand what Godzilla is saying. Godzilla is saying if the person is involved in two incidents like this, is the person doing something wrong? But I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not an expert on, I don't know about proper police training. I don't know the specifics of what happened yesterday, specifics about where everybody was and what they were doing and where they were before and the specifics of this incident. I'm not going to start blaming people. I understand the question. I just don't know, but I understand the question of somebody asking if there's a relation between these two things. Thank you, Peanut Butter Jelly and Coltred and Judge Design, the one and only Crow, Truffles Travels, and Chocolate Angel. Let's see. Anyways, I think my point is that is going to be part of the discussion, I think, going forward. I have no idea what people are going to conclude from it, but it's an interesting aspect of this whole story. By the way, Faytuck's News, who I follow, Faytuck says, most videos from Iran are a few hours late. We heard NetBlock say there's an internet blackout in Iran, a national internet blackout. Faytuck's News thinks today's protests are the largest since 2009-2010. I'm keeping an eye on that as well. Let me take some more comments from you guys here. Oh, a little more information about Renee Good too. I should mention this because when we were on yesterday, we didn't even get a chance to talk about this. So just a little background on the person who was shot. This, for example, is by AP. Woman killed by ICE agent in Minneapolis was a mother of 3, a poet, and new to the city. The woman shot and killed by the ICE officer was Renee Gold, a 37-year-old mother of 3 who had recently moved to Minnesota, says AP. She was a U.S. citizen born in Colorado. She appears to have never been charged with anything involving law enforcement beyond a traffic ticket. In social media accounts, she described herself as a poet and writer and wife and mom. She said she was currently experiencing Minneapolis, displaying a pride flag emoji on her Instagram account. A profile picture posted to Pinterest shows her smiling and holding a young child against her cheek, along with posts about tattoos, hairstyles, and some decorating. Her ex-husband, who asked not to be named out of concern for the safety of their children, said she had just dropped off her 6-year-old son at school and was driving home with her current partner when they encountered a group of ICE agents on a snowy street in Minneapolis where they had moved last year from Kansas City, Missouri. Now, it's still not clear. So I know it certainly appears from video that she may have been blocking ICE traffic, but we don't even know for sure how the car ended up in the middle of the street right there, and what all the surrounding context is and what happened before all this. So I don't want to jump to conclusions there. We don't know for sure. Did she put her car in the middle of the street to protest or not? We just don't know for sure. So that's, I assume that's part of the investigation. And I would encourage you to not draw too quick conclusions. We cover all kinds of events here. Unfortunately, we cover shootings a bunch. But it's quite regular when we cover like a prominent shooting that there's a lot of thinking, oh, this is what happened. And then it actually turns out that something a bit different happened than what people thought. So, I'm not going to start drawing conclusions when I don't know the facts. I'm not going to lie, says what court will be this case? What court will see this case? Well, no one's been charged yet. If somebody does get charged, it would depend on federal or state level, although the state has said that they're going to not be able to really conduct an adequate investigation without federal cooperation because the federal government has cut the state out of the investigation at this point. However, there could be a civil suit as well, which would be its own thing in its own court. I don't know, but from what I understand, it's possible that the family could decide to sue the officer. I have no idea what the chance of success of such a lawsuit might be, but that's not a criminal. That's not the government prosecuting someone. That's a private party suing someone else for damages, say. So that could happen too. Our viewer, Mark Westbrook, says, wait on the facts. Thanks, Peanut Butter Jelly and Godzilla and Coltred. And hang on a moment here. Yeah, I'll certainly let you know more about Iran when I can see it. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on. It sounds like there's big protests going on, and there's an internet blackout. Apparently, a nationwide internet blackout there. So, it's not easy to figure out what exactly is going on there tonight. Okie dokie says you can't sue a federal agent. Well, I saw an interview with a former federal prosecutor 2 nights ago who said he expected to see a civil suit in this case. So I'm not a legal expert, but from what that person said, that person said they expected it. So I'm not sure, but. There are some law firm websites that claim you have some sort of options to sue, but I'm not going to start trying to do legal research here when I don't know about that. Let's see here. By the way, Mercado Media is in Minnesota. They are doing a live stream today. So if you're looking for someone who's covering, say, protests, he's driving around right now, but you can check out Mercado Media. Just a little bit of this is from Reuters about can the ICE agent be prosecuted? They say Minnesota's use of force law permits state police to use deadly force only if reasonable officers would believe doing so was necessary to protect themselves or others from death or serious harm. Federal law has a similar standard, permitting use of deadly force when a reasonable officer would have probable cause to believe a person posed an immediate threat of death or serious injury. Could the officer be prosecuted? Federal agents are generally immune from state prosecution for actions taken as part of their official duties. Immunity only applies when an officer's actions were authorized under federal law and were necessary and proper. That's state immunity from state prosecution. If Minnesota charged the agent, he could seek to move the case to federal court and argue he is immune from prosecution. To prevail, the state would have to show the actions were outside his official duties or were objectively unreasonable or clearly unlawful. If a judge ruled the officer was immune, the case would be dismissed and the state would not be able to charge him again. Could federal prosecutors charge the officer? Federal prosecutors can charge law enforcement officers for fatal shootings, but the bar is very high and charges are rare. Prosecutors would need to show the officer knew his conduct wasn't lawful. Prosecutors would need to show the officer knew his conduct wasn't lawful or acted with reckless disregard for the constitutional limits of his authority, which is difficult to prove in court. The Trump administration has so far defended the officer's actions. What defenses would the ICE agent have? In addition to federal immunity, the agent could argue his actions were reasonable under the Constitution, that he acted in self-defense, or that he did not act with intent to harm or kill the woman. Could the drivers... Okay. Now this says here, regarding the lawsuit possibility. Hang on. Could the driver's family sue for civil damages? Federal officers are immune from civil lawsuits unless their conduct violated a clear constitutional right. This legal standard, known as qualified immunity, has become a highly effective tool for shielding police officers accused of using excessive force, a series of investigative stories by Reuters found in 2020. Something called qualified immunity. I am not familiar with the specifics on this. Now, one of our viewers says ICE aren't the police, but it said federal officers. So again, these are good questions, but I am not a legal expert, so I can't get into the legal subtleties. And, and I want to show you something else about, there's another article here about the woman who was killed. Her name was Renee Nicole Good. This is from the Washington Post. She was a mother of 3, like the other article said. Good had a 15-year-old daughter and 2 sons aged 12 and 6. Her ex-husband told the Post. She was a U.S. citizen, according to a post on social media by Senator Tina Smith. She graduated from Old Dominion with a degree in English in December 2020. She was originally from Colorado Springs and once co-hosted a podcast with her husband at the time, comedian Tim Macklin. Her husband at the time died in 2023, and the two share a 6-year-old son together. She was living with her partner in the Twin Cities at the time of her death. Let me read some more of your comments here. If you missed it earlier, we aired the press conference by the governor of Minnesota, and we aired JD Vance answered a bunch of questions in the White House press briefing and talked about this incident. And we also showed you the questions answered by Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem. P-Corps NPC thinks her wheels were in the resisting arrest position, whereas X-FARC-6 thinks the mental gymnastics to justify a cold-blooded murder is crazy. Ruth says, let's wait for all the facts and investigation to be completed. Bubba Sizemore says, the lesson is don't try to run over law enforcement officers. Kevin Davenport thinks she was trying to leave. Aimski says he didn't need to shoot to kill. Adam is my name says the woman was literally trying to murder the officer. Nuts thinks if that officer had been in a car incident before and mentally not in a good state to confront cars, maybe he shouldn't have been on active duty. Again, according to the Minnesota Star Tribune, the officer has been identified as Jonathan Ross, and they say he, back in June of last year, was in an incident where law enforcement was trying to arrest someone on an immigration violation, and the officer stuck his hand, broke the back window so he could open the vehicle from the inside, and then got his arm caught inside the car, between the seat and the car frame when the suspect drove away. And the officer was dragged over 100 yards and sustained significant injury with over 30 stitches. He was eventually thrown off the car, the car swerved to try to get him off of the car, and eventually he was thrown away from the car. But that was last June. Same officer, according to Minnesota Star Tribune. Red Rabbit thinks she was literally trying to swerve around him. And their training explicitly states not to stand in front of a vehicle to avoid this exact situation. That's what Red Rabbit says. Douthis says, do people really think she wanted to kill that agent? SMH. Fred Flintstone says, you're trained to shoot to kill. All right, I am wondering, hang on a moment here. I am wondering if maybe we should at some point do a Iran stream, although it's not a lot. There's not a lot you can report on in Iran, but we can talk about it. But I think we've covered like the big live updates today on this so far. Oh, by the way, thanks to Mr. Schmeltz and Guy from the 207 in my Crystal Clear Life on Twitch. No, I don't. If I'm going to cover Iran, I'd want to start a new stream. I don't want to keep it the same stream. I'd want to just do a new stream. Yeah, I think maybe we should. I might have to take a break before doing that, though. Hold on a second. Hang on. If I do, I'll have to take a short break before doing it. Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. But I'll have to take a short break. So, by the way, thanks to, oh, there's somebody else I need to thank. Wait 1 second here. I see what's happening here. I got, my chat update was not working here. Hold on a second. Hang on one moment here. Thanks to DBGTOO, who thinks it's a sad state of affairs that people defend cold murder over an escape attempt. DBG thinks they could have followed her or shot her tires. Thanks to Red Squirrel and Confidence in God, thank you. And I am Charlie and LM5902 for your support. Mammy Washington. I got behind on thanking people. All right, so I'm making an executive decision. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up this update stream, and then I'm going to take a little break, and I might eat something first and then come on the air. We'll see what happens. I'll have to eat something at some point. But, you know, if we do a news stream, we can also give updates on this as well. But I think we probably should discuss Iran in a separate stream. So that's what I'm going to do. So be on the lookout for a stream a little later. Okay. I very much appreciate you joining our update on this story, and certainly we may do more updates on this as news progresses. Okay, as more news comes out, which there very well may be. But let's do that. Let's do that. So if you want, subscribe, follow the channel, Agenda Free TV. We cover all kinds of live breaking news without an agenda. Also, I would suggest turn on our notifications. We have a notification system. Whenever we go live, it'll send you a notification. It's free to sign up, but that way you don't miss a stream. You know, I never know when big new news is going to happen. The mods will post a link in the chat to the notifications, and you can find that link in YouTube and Facebook in the description of this video. You can sign up for the free notifications. So check that out. Sign up for those. Also, I will post updates on my X account, @Lookner on X, about news. That's what I post there when I'm off the air and when I'm on the air too. @Lookner on X for those who want to follow me there. But I do anticipate doing another stream after I get off the air. I might eat something in between. And also, what was I going to say? But I very much appreciate you being here. And I know, thanks for letting me, I've been trying to read a lot of comments. I don't get to all of them, obviously. But I do appreciate that. Mystic Maximus sent me a video. I can't show it on the air. A video of Jonathan Ross being dragged 6 months ago from that incident. I guess there's video from the incident 6 months ago, but I can't show it on the air. Anyways, maybe we do another stream, we'll talk about it. Thanks, Mystic Maximus. I'll put the link in the chat if I can confirm it's the video. Is this the video? I think this might be it. Hold on. I can put a link if you want to watch it. I think I'm going to post a link in the chat to this WCCO video, which I think is a story about the incident again, Minnesota Star Tribune said the agent who did the shooting yesterday was involved in an incident back in June of last year where he was dragged over 100 yards by a car. So I just posted the video in the chat. Thanks to a Mystic Maximus for sending that in. Okay, again, I'm sorry I can't get to all the comments, but I appreciate people writing in. I'm glad we got to some of them. So thanks for writing in and asking questions and sending your comments and sending your updates. So again, my plan is to, I'll probably end up, I'd like to do another stream in a little bit on the Iran situation, but let me take a little break here. So hey, thanks so much to our moderators. I really appreciate all of our moderators. You guys are awesome. People like Beth Mythical, Janet B, and Ruth over there on YouTube. We could not have our chat rooms without our moderators. They make it possible. So thank you, moderators. On Twitch, Big Ball of Yarn, I Got That Fire, Matthew Kohai 3, and Surly Dev. On Facebook, Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley, thank you. Also thanks to Linda Bell, Larry, and Misha who moderate on X. Thanks so much. Thanks to everybody who donated too. That's super nice, you guys. That's what allows the channel to be on the air. If you ever want to donate, you can go to agendafree.tv, agendafree.tv. Mermaid Fishing Co. I owe a thanks to. Mermaid Fishing Co. says the second and third shot were fired from the side of the vehicle into the window. The officer was no longer in supposed harm's way. That's what Mermaid Fishing Co. says. Thanks to Katie Cat also, and everybody else. Hopefully I thanked everybody. I got to everybody. Spencer Biohazard, thank you on Twitch. You know what? I didn't see. I think Governor Walz said there was some sort of donation site for the woman who got shot, her children, but I don't think he said what it was. So I don't have that information. Hold on. If it's like an official site, TMZ said there's a GoFundMe campaign. I haven't looked into this. TMZ says there's a GoFundMe campaign benefiting the family of the person who was shot that has received more than $550,000 in donations. Anyways, I haven't had time to look into it, but TMZ says that. You could go to GoFundMe. ABC6 News posted something about it. ABC6 News KAAL said there's also said there's a GoFundMe. So if you're interested in that, go to GoFundMe. I would say. But again, I haven't really looked into it myself, so I'd rather have you just go in and look into it yourself. Yeah, I mean, if you go to GoFundMe, I found one which has $800,000 raised. But again, I don't like giving out links when I haven't had time to investigate things. This would appear to be the one that the articles were talking about. Again, you should be able to find it on GoFundMe. But the one I'm looking at is over $800,000 raised. If you're interested in that, I just want to mention it. Okay, thanks for your support. And also, we do have a chat where you can chat with other viewers when we're not on the air, the Agenda Free TV Discord chat. It's free. A bunch of our viewers like doing that. That chat is at the same link as our free notifications link. So if you want, check out our Discord chat. Thanks so much to our Discord mods for all you do. Discord mods, thank you. Also, for those of you on X, I would suggest following our X account at Agenda Free TV, because I always post there when we're going on the air, give you a heads up, and I post updates about the channel there. And on YouTube, if you're on YouTube and watching there, I would suggest turning on the YouTube notifications. That can be helpful to see when we're live. To do that, subscribe to the channel, then click the bell and choose all notifications. If you're already subscribed, make sure you click the bell and choose all notifications. So again, the plan is probably to do another stream in a little bit on Iran. But let me get off the air and look into it. I got to take a break. Thanks to Katie Cat and Coptic by Faith for your support, by the way. Also, shout out to our Twitch subscribers like Matthew Kohai 3 and Orville Libe and Wall Street and Shaggy and Amalian and Wet in Your and CC, Tatermong, and Graybeard Games, D. George, and all of our other Twitch subscribers. Huge thanks to you. All of our Facebook subscribers as well. People like Sharon Classen Goslin, Margaret Riley, Diane Allworth, Kay Lowry Body, and Robert Rial II, Christy Claft. All of our subscribers over there. Michael Clayton, Kristen McConnell Gates. Thanks to all of our Facebook subscribers. Tommy Sonin. Thanks, Tommy Sonin, for subscribing. And our YouTube members, people like Sam Patton, the one and only Louis Belmont Show, Pat W., UV Lightning, Mike J., SC Gilmore, Confidence in God, Marcus G., Tanks a Lot, Mammy Washington, Christine Gagnon, Ben Van, Gary Bain, Storm Laughter, Mama 457 Rose, Tina, Rock Girl Days, and all of our other YouTube members. Thank you. And all of our other viewers. I really appreciate you guys watching. So I know I've said it before, but again, the plan is to take a break, and at this point, I'm planning on coming back to do another stream and talk about Iran. But let me take a break and do that. Thanks, Dean DeVillers, for watching, Ann Spencer, Jerry Veronica Savage over there on Facebook for watching, Trisha Liderson, Nicole Parker, Nicolette Parker, Paula Thompson, and others, Melissa Terry, Audrey Burbank, and Alxo82 on Twitch, ATRO11, and Timbit Power, Herbert45, Progressive Dub over there on Twitch, and everybody else. So let me just do one last check and make sure I'm not missing anything huge and new. All right, that's the latest I'm seeing now. All right, so that's it for now. By the way, if you missed it, you can rewind and watch JD Vance's White House press briefing appearance where he talked about this. You can watch Governor Walz of Minnesota. We showed his press conference. We showed you the Q&A that Kristi Noem did today, so you can rewind and check out all that. Oh, thanks also to Jay Blasingame. Jay Blasingame over there on Patreon. Thanks for your support on Patreon, Jay Blasingame. That's really nice of you. All right, so that's it for now. I'm going to take a break, and I am planning on doing another stream today. So thank you for watching, and we will see you soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.